Yes, indeed. I have returned. I'm sorry for last week, but some events came up that I had to deal with. And heads up, I'll make sure to mention this later on in the show, but I won't be here next week. Um, I got some things going on that I have to attend to. So I know for sure next Saturday I won't be here. And I apologize for not being here last Saturday. But we're still on the road to episode 200. We might miss a week in between here and there. I think we're on episode 193 today. We're still on the road to 200. I'm still hoping for you guys to. No one has reached out to me. Hoping for you guys to hit me up with some ideas for the 200th episode. Um, that said, I want to also shout out Jack Hadero, who responded to the call and recorded a promo uh, for the show. So shout out to him. I think he's the only one who responded uh, fully. So shout out to Jack Cadero. You know what it is. I like to jump on here just to let you guys know what we have in store. Before I do that, greetings goes out to the matron. The matron is in the chat saying greetings, everyone. Greetings to you, matron. Make sure you guys are tuned in to the matron and support her in the endeavors that she's doing with reading those classic texts. Tonight's show, we're going to discuss why are less black men attending college. We're going to try to answer the question, are we in love with the white man in Africa? We're going to talk about this scenario. I saw it like 2 weeks ago, too, so thanks for this prompt. A sister asked ChatGPT, what would happen if all black people left the U.S. for the motherland? Very interesting. We're going to talk about this, too. I think I had posted this prompt as well, but someone else posted it. Blackness should not equal poverty. There's a very nice video about black folks making poverty look cool. We're going to discuss it. And we're going to discuss another situation where FAFO occurred, fuck around and find out. So those are the things we have in store for tonight. Come one, come all. You guys can hit the link that's pinned to the top of the chat. And you guys can join the panel tonight. In the meantime, while I start the show officially, please hit the like button, share the show onto your social media. It doesn't cost a thing. Invite a few people to huddle around and listen to Shoot the Breeze with you as well. I didn't ask if anyone could hear me, but I'm pretty sure people could hear. In the meantime, we're going to start the show. And on the other side, I'll drop Shoot the Breeze topic number 1, as well as introduce any and all of my hosts and panelists tonight. So stay tuned.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about black empowerment. Our show focuses on black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Koku. Just want to remind you guys before we get the show rolling that this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. There are other shows on the network you are invited to tune into.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Greetings, fam. Tune in to The Learning Curve with me, the revolutionary matron on KWAZ Radio.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Yes, indeed. Make sure you guys are also tuned in to Brother Bakari on the BBN network. Make sure you tune into Forecast Radio. Make sure you tune into Forecast Radio. Make sure you tune into Kofi, the Black Critic. And you could catch Cassidra, Cheek, or Ramon the Bush on Forecast on his Wednesday shows each week. With that said, in the chat, Jackadera says we can hear you. I see daily affirmations by Pauline is out there saying good evening to you. Daily affirmations by Pauline. Thanks for coming through. With that said, I have some panelists with me, so let me introduce them. First, let me go with Jackadera. Jackadera, how are you this week?
Peace and blessings, man. I'm in a good mood. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming through, and thank you for the recording that you did.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We got Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective with us. Oni, how are you this week?
What it do? I'm cool. Just good to have you guys. Just not have you. What I'm talking about. Just good to be here. It's late, on the motherland, but I'm gonna try to stick through. Hopefully, I can survive the night.
Yeah, if you can't, man, you could bow out. I totally understand, and I appreciate you for coming through. Real quick, how's the continent? How's your neck of the woods since we've last?
Oh, it's good, man. It's good. Hold on a second. Did your internet glitch or was it mine? Because I have I realize I have some sort of service that slows down my internet, so I can turn it off. But I might have to just dip in and come back if it's my end. But but did anybody else hear him glitch or was it just me?
No, I heard
any issue.
I heard it too.
Oh, you heard him glitch too? Okay, cool. All right, so Africa's cool, man. It's peace, It's just like this is the happiest I've been. I used to wake up every day in America like with some prior injury pains. You know what I mean? Like every day, just waking up in pain. But like I didn't remember I had pain. You know what I mean? Like I didn't remember the bodily pain. It doesn't even make any sense. But it's like, yeah, man, this is a blessing. No religion, right? That's it.
Appreciate that, Oni. And as you guys can have Buana's with us. Buana, how are you this week?
Hey, man.
Buana, you muted me talking. I don't know what's going on with Buana. Buana, can you hear me?
Coco, you didn't hear me just now?
All right.
Coco,
In the
you
meantime,
didn't hear me just now?
No.
My bad. I just wanted to say hello to the good brothers. I hope everyone is doing very well. I hope everyone is healthy, and hopefully we'll have a great show tonight.
Appreciate that, Buana. Thanks for coming through. Last but not least, let's welcome in Black Steel. Black Steel, how are you this week?
I'm doing great, man. I'm just doing great. I'm just sorry I'm a little late. I meant to be on time, but I had to take a quick shower. But I'm here, though. Hope everyone's doing great tonight.
No, that's good stuff, man. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming through. Again, if you're out there listening, you can join the panel. Just click the link pinned to the top of the chat, and you can join us. Daily Affirmations by Pauline says 3 of us have gathered and are listening. After rushing around all week, this is family time. Much appreciated. This is what Gavi told us we should be doing. And then there's Cheryl out there who says Madwo, which is good evening. So good evening to you, Cheryl. Thanks for coming through. Again, my apologies for not being here last week. Something came up with my family, and I got a family situation going on now that I probably won't be on this coming Saturday. So just to let everyone know in advance, I'll mention it again before the end of the show. Shout out to Trigger Happy, who's out there giving us a wave. So shout out to him, and shout out to Anthony, who says peace to the panel and the chat. So I appreciate everyone who has joined us tonight. You know what? Let's just get right into it, I guess. Let's get right into Shoot the Breeze topic number 1. This has been a buzz conversation on Twitter all week, it seems. And I'm happy that we can come together here and have the discussion. Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 says, I don't know why this does that. Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 says, why are less black men attending college? This came with a link that is going to take us to Facebook. I don't usually do stuff with Facebook, but it's all good. So you guys should be able to see you guys should be what's going on? Okay, there it goes. Finally, you guys can see my screen now. This is from Tommy J. Curry's post. The caption says, "This is a very dangerous message." In fact, you know what? I'll play the message first, and then I'll read the caption.
Horrendous trend. The number of black men at four-year colleges has plummeted, and at Howard University, black students as there are black men. Howard is just 19% black men. There's an array of reasons why this is happening. A lot of young black men don't believe that they can or should be able to handle college intellectually or financially. Guys, college is a critical part of gaining the intellectual skills you need to get into the middle class. Black women have known for years and years that they need degrees to overcome racism and misogyny and get as far as they can in life, and they have become the most educated demographic in the country. But leaving black men out of that trend means a lot of potential wealth that could go into the black community won't go into the black community, because people who could have become middle-class professionals and intellectuals will not be able to make that leap. Apparently, black men are not attending college, and this is a horrendous trend. The number of black men at four-year colleges has plummeted, and at Howard University, men. Howard is just 19% black men. There's an array of reasons why this is happening, but the number one thing sociologists point to is something they call the belief gap, that a lot of young black men believe that they can or should be able to handle college intellectually or financially. Guys, college is a critical part of gaining the intellectual skills you need to get into the middle class. Black women have known for years and years that they need degrees to overcome racism and misogyny and get as far as they can in life, and they have become the most educated demographic in the country. But leaving black men out of that trend means a lot of potential wealth that could go into the black community won't go into the black community, because people who could have become middle-class professionals and intellectuals will not be able to make that leap. Apparently, black men are not attending college. Apparently, black men are not number.
Sorry about that. I don't use Facebook for this kind of reason too. But the caption. So after seeing this, Dr. Curry says, this is a very dangerous message. Black men have been outnumbered by black women, sorry, since the 1970s in American colleges and universities. See pundits start with inaccurate knowledge about black men and build a pathological theory to account for those things. The belief gap is not the number one reason for black men not attending university. Again, this puts the onus on black male motivation rather than the structural issues that target black males in education. This language asserts that black males are ignorant while black women have solved this problem. If you read the article, Tori would have seen that Chetty found that black men experience higher rates of discrimination than their female counterparts and hence have the highest downward mobility among all groups. Much of the more empirical work points to a gendered racism or anti-black misandry that creates obstacles for black males in colleges. We see these negating forces operating over the life course of black men and boys from primary school to college, university, and beyond in employment. This is what happens when anyone can speak on black males with no accountability. So this should be a good conversation here. If the video was choppy to you guys who are watching, just drop a 1 because I'm trying to figure out what the cause of the issue is. Just drop a 1. So Jacadero says 1. Okay, well, we'll start with Jacadero then. Jacadero. Why are less black men attending college? What are your thoughts on this?
I'm just gonna speak for a personal experience. You know, I graduated from college, and if I didn't graduate and focus on a major that not only I was interested in, but I felt like was worth it, I wouldn't have went to college at all. One, high school was really boring for me. I was somebody that couldn't wait to get out of high school. I didn't see a point in sitting in various classrooms for 8 hours a day. I also didn't understand on how quick, I didn't understand why it was necessary for us to follow models that would have us essentially not necessarily building or allowing us to provide for ourselves, but essentially just going out and making a job by the end of it. Again, I'm going to speak for just personal experience. There's a lot going on in social media, and especially in spaces where entrepreneurship is promoted. You know, you can become a barber, a landscaper, a personal trainer, a photographer, even a mechanic. And you can do that without going to college, really, and provide for yourself. So maybe, just maybe, a lot of these black men are saying to themselves, why should I continue what I was doing in high school just to be able to get a piece of paper and apply for a job when I can just do these trades that I had just discussed and get it on my own?
Appreciate that, Jacadero. So you're saying, yeah, there's the issue in high school where, you know, why continue? If this was my high school experience, why continue in my, you know, college this way too? So I kind of feel you on that. Real quick in the chat, what am I trying to say? KW7 says black women are not the most educated. They are the most enrolled with median incomes of around 47K. Cheryl says across all races, women have outnumbered the men in the university. What's the point? She goes on to say, the point is more infighting and division amongst black people. You know, Cheryl, I'll tell you something. This week in particular, I've noticed so much infighting, not only in the gender war stuff, but now I see people are talking about whose plate of food looks better. It's like, come on, man. Like it's just crazy. Juan, what are your thoughts on this?
Koku, can you hear me? Yeah, so I
Yes, sir.
believe that there's a lot of different kinds of things going on, which is not being addressed. I think that when you talk about black men in terms of university, what's not addressed is what are black males' obligation out of high school? Can they stave off 4 years of can they stave off not making an income after graduating high school, right? For 4 years to go to a university or college. Most of the homes are run by females within the black community. When men get of a certain age, they feel like their obligation is to help mama. They can't help mama in university. They can't help mama staving off 4 years without receiving any kind of income or funds, without helping to provide for their mothers. Because a lot of these houses, believe it or not, the little boys become husband sons. Husband sons. That's not talked about. Because the sons now feel like it's their obligation to take care of mama soon as they get out of school. We need to find an income to help mama, because mama can't do the things she been doing on her own. Because most of them are not highly skilled or highly trained either. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the gentleman said in the video that education will help with the crisis of racism. Where does that happen? Where does that happen? Because you have a PhD, that means you won't feel racism anymore. What about the Harvard professor who the police didn't want to permit to get into his own home? I think they call him, I can't remember his name now. He couldn't even get into his own home.
Henry Louis Gates.
Henry Louis Gates. He have all the education in the world. So if education is going to prevent you from experiencing the traumas of racism, why didn't it help him? And there's so many different others that you could mention who have degree. You see, judges getting beat up, judges getting arrested by police officers. You know what I mean? Yeah, education will not protect you. That is a really a ridiculous argument. Absolutely ridiculous argument. The other thing the man doesn't talk about is the tremendous amount of debt coming out of university. You could be a college graduate, but be buried in $100 and $200 worth of debt. And you probably take, 30 years to try to pay that off. Who wants to enslave themselves economically for 30 years? You don't have a house, you don't have sufficient car, you don't have many kinds of other things, but you go and enslave. Many people look at that and they weigh and measure it and say, well, maybe it's better that I do something else. And also, there are many people within the black community who can develop trade skill and trade sets. And I am a promoter of this. Because when you get trade skills, when you get trade sets, you are more apt or inclined to do more, I feel. As a matter of fact, you can make a shitload of money doing that as well. I feel like sometimes we dismiss the trade skills into talking up the universities. Not to say that we don't need engineers, we don't need doctors and lawyers and professional classes of people, but we also need many tradesmen within our community too. So why do black men only have to go run to a 4-year university? They could get trade skill. What is the percentage of black men going to trade school? You know what I mean? It's just don't only have to be university. Trade schools are also learning institutions as well. You learn to become a better, you learn how to become a skilled individual and be able to sell your labor, a skilled labor in the marketplace and provide for your families. University is one direction. And there are many other directions when you so-called in the so-called first world that you could do to help your family, assist mama, and do many other kinds of things. And that's not really being talked about by the gentleman in the video. And I think it's very unfair. I think it's very unfair. But I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there, Koku.
Appreciate that, Buana. I just want to point out KW Don 7 made another point too. He said Toure, who the guy in the video, is a clown who is married to a non-black woman. So, which I'm not surprised by now that KW Don said that. Cheryl agreed with Buana. She said, "Good point, Buana. PhD alone is not going to stop racism." Excellent point. Trigger Happy says here, he says, these colleges are not of our making. So there's no way that we would fix the system when the education system uses the logic of the overall system. Excellent point. Trigger. With that said, let me hear from Oni. Oni, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so like I said, I left the country, so I'm just a little bit different. But as far as like my thing is, all right, I'll put it this way. The other day I was going to the campus here in Tanzania. Just a bunch of black people. Just a bunch of black people. You know? And like I said, like black people are shooting, like in America, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Like honestly. America is okay for making money, you know? But outside of making money, if you're trying to get social equality with a people, with a different people, like if you're trying to get social equality with a people, and you're in a country like come on, like it's like the farther away from America you are, the more it makes, the less sense it makes. Like you're trying to get social equality with the conquerors of the land. You know what I mean? And you're not a conqueror in the slightest. So it's for me, it's like, okay, black men are not attending college as much as who? Like you mean as much as black women? I don't like what? So if black, like here's the thing, I'll put it this way too, because I went to grad school. I was the only black student there. And not just the only black student there. I was one of the only quote unquote Americans in my graduate program. You know what I mean? There were like Russian, there were Chinese, there were, you know, those sort of people, right? There were international people. It was a lot of like we kind of like ignore the fact that most people are not trying to go to college, or not even not trying to go to college, not trying to, you know, really do anything like academically rigorous. Maybe it's worse for black men than it is for black women. I don't know. But again, most people never even regarded black women or women in general as doing many academically rigorous things, you know? So like, you know, for the most part, you know, it's like, yeah, okay, this woman's going to college, but she's studying, you know, women's studies, or she's studying literature, she's studying art, you know? And it's nothing against women's studies, literature, or art. I kind of had a minor in, you know, I didn't really minor in it, but you know, I had a whole bunch of classes in women's studies. I like them. But what I'm saying is that, like, if we're being honest, if we're going by our own experience, like most black men, most people are not trying to get to college. Most black men are not trying to get to college. When we went to high school, it was one way, and now it's probably much worse, right? So when I went to high school, like I was paying attention. Like I was paying attention in school, and people could say, "Hey, look, it's not just on you," because there was a lot of discrimination for black people to not succeed in school, you know. But again, you know, we have to put into context. You're in a hostile nation, and that I'll put it this way. Like my experience in college, in high school, was that I was the best math student in the school, but because I was black, they put me in the dumb classes, you know. And so even though I was the best math student in the school, they were like, yeah, but you're the best math student in a dumb class. So we're not going to advance you to the higher classes. You'll have challenges in the higher classes. You know, I pretty much had to beg for them to give me a chance. They gave me a chance eventually because I think it was because I took the state exam and I got the highest score in the school. You know what I mean? So, you know, when you get the highest score in the school, it's like, okay, it can't just be that you're good in this one class. You have to be good on a national or a statewide level, you know? But that was like, and then they like, I had to beg. They didn't put me in the highest class. They put me in the whatever. Point is that the school was definitely trying to hold me down, definitely trying to hold Black people down. But on top of that, a lot of Black people, maybe because the school's trying to hold them back, right? But a lot of Black people took that to heart and, you know, were held back. But again, that's a condition of being in a nation that is hostile to you and hostile to your advancement. You know, I don't like this guy, and I think what he said was made up. Not this person right here, but there's this guy, I can't remember his name, Claude Anderson, I think, right? But he tells his story, and I think it's bullshit, okay? His story is, you know, the first Black person to be enslaved was from another Black man here in America because blah, 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 right? And the context before that, he says, you know, before Black men used to come to America, they were free. They were indentured servants. They served their indentured servitude. And then it was over and they could, you know, do whatever in society. And so the way how he tells the story, and again, I think it's total bullshit because there's no historical precedence and everybody knows the Portuguese enslaved people for a reason, right? But what he's saying is that, you know, early America didn't have slavery, it just had indentured servitude, and Black people were just as free, blah, blah, blah. And because Black people were just as free, they brought these Black people over. And when their indentured servitude ran out, they got all the white women. You know, where the white women at? They got all the white women, they got all the money, they got all the good houses, the good jobs, because, you know, bar for bar, you know, person to person, Black people are just better than white folk. Let's just be honest, right? Or that's what, you know, Claude Anderson was kind of communicating, right? But here's the thing. And so then after all these Black men came here and they were just, you know, integrating, getting all the women, the white people were like, hey, hold on a second. We can't have things fair. You get what I'm saying? We can't have things fair. We have to have an advantage, because if we don't have an advantage, these guys are going to get our women, you know? And I mean, a lot of times you will see some memes on the internet of, you know, Black men just getting other people's women, you know, and, you know, maybe even Black men getting some good jobs, getting so on and so forth, right? Where the white women at? So I'm saying I don't really believe this story, but there is some legitimacy there, you know, in the sense of why in the world would white people, the dominant population or the majority population, not try to hold you down? If realistically speaking, you could, with your aptitude, with your ability, surpass them. And we see this, in fact, with China. You know, we see this with Africa, but we see this particularly with China in the sense of this white boy, yes, he absolutely did want to hold China back. And when he stops holding China back, China surpasses America. China surpasses Europe. You know, why would white people, knowing that, I mean, not saying that they know that Black people are, you know, better genetically, but maybe they do, but who knows, right? My point is that why would white people, even if we weren't better, even if we were equal genetically, why would they not try to hold us back? Because if we are not held back, we will get the positions over them. And one thing we have to realize about these white folk, one thing we have to realize about these elections in these past few years after Obama won, white people are trying to stay on top. And that's how they've always been, and that's how they always will be. And so, yeah, you know, if I again here in Africa, we're going to college like it's you know, Sunday church. You know what I mean? We're just going to college in mass numbers. If you're not going to college in mass numbers in America, it's probably because America doesn't want you to go to college in mass numbers, right? And I think Black people have to come to terms with, you know what? If I were a white, like if you were a white person, you'd probably think it was a good idea not to let Black people rise above you, not to make Black people be your psychologist, not to make Black people be your pastor, not to make Black people be your presidents, not to make black people be your CEOs. There is no sense in making black people giving black people the positions of power in your country. Now, obviously, we as black people, we feel like, hey, we should occupy those positions of power. I absolutely understand that. I think that we as black people should be reasonable about that, but we're not the majority population. We're not the population in power. And I think the population in power, the majority population, should put a hold to it. The same way that if I told you guys, hey, you know, the Chinese are running shit over here, you guys would say, hey, the Chinese shouldn't do that. The state should intervene. The state should try to hold the Chinese back. You know, the same way that we would reason that and say that's reasonable, the same way the Americans, the white Americans, have reasoned that for black people for 400 years, and we just don't get it. That's all I'm saying.
Excellent points there, Only. I like Cheryl, I agree with you. Daily Affirmations by Pauline says, I always watch people who think because they have a degree, they have arrived. I appreciate an education, but it does not make you exempt from discrimination. Thank you for that, Daily Affirmations by Pauline. With that said, let's land with Black Steel. Let's land with wait, did I get to Black Steel yet? I think I did, right?
No, you haven't talked to me yet.
No,
okay. Yet. Let's go to Black Steel.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's comments on this. A couple of people in the chat really touched on some of the points. But I think I think Oni kind of hit on it inadvertently before he gave his "We should all repatriate" speech. But it's really boils down to how black children, especially black boys, are seen in education from kindergarten to 12th grade. We saw a video not too long ago of, they had some preschoolers sitting down playing, and all the teachers were like pointing out the kid misbehaving, and every teacher gravitated to the black boy, even though he wasn't misbehaving. None of the kids were misbehaving, but everybody just hyper focused on the black boy. So and I think I also appreciate the chat mentioning that black women are not the most educated group in America; they're the most enrolled. So what we do in society, they like to take the top 10% of a group, right, and compare them to everybody. And again, as somebody said in the chat, women outpace the men in every racial group when it comes to attaining college degrees. It's not a black thing. It is a white thing. It's an Asian thing. It's every group of people. Women have outpaced their male counterparts in college education. Not only that, but this trend of black women attending college more than black men. Somebody mentioned it was the 70s. Du Bois mentioned it back in the 1920s that black women were exceeding black men in college graduation rates. But I think the root lies in the way black boys are treated in education, in kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school. Black boys lead with suspensions. They lead with at least before every school year starts, we have a day where we go over data. We go over absenteeism, tardies, suspensions, in-school out suspension, discipline, things like that. We go over test scores and things like that. So when we go over our test scores as an educator, right, we start to see certain trends. Number one, who leads in suspension, both in-school and out-school suspension? Black children, especially black boys, right? Which is shocking because we have our school district is a majority minority district. We have black and Hispanic. So the Hispanic kids come in like a second, but black boys, especially boys, lead in suspensions. But the reality is that all children misbehave in school. But for some reason, the Hispanic children aren't receiving as many suspensions. The white children aren't receiving as many suspensions, even though all the children misbehave. But who's the majority of the teachers? White women. So they see those black children's very presence as hostile, right? So they're going to write a black child up for the same misbehavior they would a white child. And that black child is going to have a very negative experience in education. So with that negative experience, I only mentioned how his experience was negative, right? Why would you want to continue your education if just being in that classroom is hostile? Unfortunately, we see how this, what they call the school to prison pipeline. They can almost track those children who do poorly in tests, who do poorly in attendance. Those Black children tend to be, put on the fast track to incarceration, right? And this is very much by design. So if we're going to ask this question as to why Black men don't attend college, you have to touch on, why are Black boys' reading scores so low? Why is it they're suspended more than white children are? Why is it that Black children are generally seen as a threat in school? So with this being said, how are we questioning, why aren't there Black men and children? How are your boys' reading scores? Why is it that Miss So-and-so keeps writing him up for things that white children don't get written up for? And I like just how when we start talking about this thing, we didn't really so much focus on individual stuff. It's a systemic issue. And it's not just Black boys. Black girls do somewhat better than Black boys, but they're all overall not achieving the way that I believe that we can. And again, this is not a issue where I believe that Black boys are deficient in anything, right? But I believe it is an education system that has failed them and has failed to nurture their potential. And I say this because this is a systemic problem. There's a reason why Black people tend to go into the trades more so, because many times our young people have to get a job when they graduate from high school. They don't have, or many of them join the military because the opportunities that it provides. And that's the result of us living in a racist society. So I'll go ahead and speak there. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Black Seal. Listening to all of you and discussing this topic, it reminds me of a talk, I think it was, that Dr. Umar Johnson gave maybe a decade ago. He said something like, if you also look at how the school is set up, the school is set up in a way it's a little bit more conducive for Black girls to be able to sit still and receive that education, whereas Black boys tend to want to move around. They want to do, they want to be active and stuff like that. So listening to you guys reminded me of that statement he made of how the experience of a Black boy starting by the time, like Jacadero kind of said as well, by the time you get to high school and talking about graduating high school, you really ain't trying to do no more years of that stuff. In fact, Umar was making the correlation that if you look at how schools are designed, and I'm thinking about this school that Oni is familiar with, the way it's designed is designed almost like a prison. And and then we wonder how our boys, how Black boys end up in this pipeline and stuff like that. It's all intricately put together, I think. And I think this conversation kind of draws back to that. Is there any other thoughts by anybody on this topic? Any last thoughts? All right, no last thoughts. Okay, so I think I got everyone for sure on that one. Thanks for all the comments in the chat as well. I think I got all the important comments. I mean, not that any is not important, but I think I got all the pertinent comments. So let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 then. Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 says, are we in love with the white man in Africa? I'll be curious to hear what Oni's thoughts are on this one.
Is this about me?
This prompt takes us to no, not about you. Why is this not working? Trying to clear the panelists from the image and it won't clear. That's crazy. Okay, good. So on X, this is from Mutembai TV. It says drama in Kenya, KO. as American preachers chase like a Buru Kenje. I don't know what that means. I'm sure Jacadero will tell me in a second. For preaching that Jesus Christ was a black man. So it's a close to 5-minute video. We'll watch it and then we'll discuss.
Huyu ni mmoja kati walioumizwa. Naona hili ni jiwe akagonga usoni. Kwa kuhubiria watu wetu tu ni watu wa maana na wao ni wana wa Israeli. Na Yesu Kristo mwenyewe ni mtu mweusi kama nyinyi. Akagonga mawe.
All of them. We went to, as soon as the church heard Jesus was black, they were infuriated. We've just reading the scripture. They got so mad, they threw, you hate the way you look, you hate anything black. Why? Because it upsets your European colonizers. So they look, we're their brothers. We're here to help you. They start throwing rocks, men and women. They despise what the Bible says. So we read Song of Solomon. You read it, right?
Yes, sir.
And they were like, no. Picked up rocks, started throwing.
Tuko hapa kuhubiria watu wetu kwamba wao ni wana wa Israeli kulingana na Biblia. Na hivyo ndivyo iliyoandikwa kwenye Biblia. Hiyo ndiyo message. Kuhubiri ukweli kuhusu historia yetu na kwa kina kakangu. Hakuna mahali utaona ati Mkenya ama Mkamba ama Mkikuyu ama Mluya. Hiyo ni kumaanisha tumetenganishwa na historia yetu kupitia ukoloni na kupitia dini. Ndivyo hiyo kazi yetu kufanya hapa. Kama ilivyoelezwa hapo awali, hili shirika lilianzia Marekani mwaka wa 223. 2003. Yeah. Na tunasambaa duniani kote kuhubiria watu wetu na tutaendelea kuhubiria watu wetu. We will continue doing that kwa sababu watu wetu wanahitaji huu ukweli. Sasa sisi kama hapa tumefungua shule, kazi yetu ni kufunza watu wetu. Tunawa invite wanakuja, wanasoma sheria na wajue jinsi ya kuifanya kwenye maisha yao. Ukifuatilia sana utatujua sisi ni watu tunasaidia hata jamii. Utatupata kwenye prison tukihubiria wafungwa. Utatupata kwenye streets tukifanya clean up. Kwa sababu sio tu neno peke yake, tunajua watu wetu wana mahitaji. Tunaenda kwa orphanages na kwa shule, tunalisha watu wetu. Kama kuwapatia neno, tunasaidia community. That's why tunataka kuambia watu wa Ruiru na Kenya kwa ujumla kwa uzuri.
So there's no closed caption. So I'm gonna do something a little different. I'm gonna come back to you later, Jacadero, but to just start us off, can you fill in some of the blanks, the language, the language stuff that we wouldn't get? Can you fill in that for us, please?
I was laughing, man. Yeah, okay. You'll come back to me, but some of the some of the things that this young man was saying was, we come in, we try to educate, our brothers and sisters here about what's really in the Bible, and we want them to, to be able to understand that what they've been told has been lies. What they've been told has been lies, but yet, since they've been brainwashed, they wanted to attack us. that's pretty much like what he just kept repeating. And yeah, you'll come back to me, man. So go ahead.
Appreciate that breakdown. Thank you for that. Let me start with Black Seal on this one. Black Seal, what say you to this?
So I noticed, first of all, that who was talking with the Hebrew Israelites, right? Now, we've talked about Hebrew Israelites before, and how they basically talk about how that black people are the true children of Israel. We're the true Jew, we're the real Jews as opposed to the fake Jews, and so on and so forth. And black people are the sons of Ham, and they sold the true Hebrews into slavery, and so on and so forth. So I question whether or not is it because they didn't want to hear the truth of Jesus black, or because you came in there with your cult talk, talking about how black people are, Africans, and we're the real Jews, and the curse of Ham, and black people were enslaved because we're cursed by God, and this is God's way of punishing us. And I'm really skeptical that that wasn't the reason they just completely attacked, went off on those people. Because I got to tell you, I've known Hebrew Israelites. That is a cult, right? So it's very possible, and I think it's more than likely, is that they started talking nonsense, and the people responded to that nonsense that they talked. Because they do talk about how black people are punished by slavery because we didn't obey God's laws, we didn't follow the Torah, or whatever the fuck, whatever religious obligation that they say that black people are guilty of not fulfilling. So I believe that is more likely the source of their anger. It's not so much that, oh, you don't want to know we're the real Jews, or, okay, did God punish us and we're really the sons of Ham, and so on and so forth. Because, anybody who's familiar with their ideology, if you're not, completely brainwashed, would be hostile towards it, especially if you're a black person. If you're familiar with the way they've talked about black people and slavery and everything else like that, this is something that I think a lot of people don't know because we don't really engage with what they teach so much. We're very happy to see black people out here, marching and being proud. But what they really want is a return to the Old Testament times of the Bible, and they believe that once we have returned to the Old Testament, the Lord shall return, and that way we'll be able to be free, and we'll be, go back to the times of David, all the other nonsense that we talk about in the scripture. And I think that's really what it was. That's what I would interpret it to be. So I'll go ahead and leave it there. But I don't think that it's just, we just don't want to hear Jesus black. They don't want to hear that they're inferior and God has cursed them, and that all of our suffering is a result of us not paying attention to the scriptures or whatever nonsense that they say, these Hebrew Israelites. It's black people, unfortunately, because of our religious indoctrination, we're kind of unfortunately primed to believe in cults, and it's sad that that's the case. But yeah, I don't believe for a second that was the reason why they were saying that, because Jesus being black, okay, so he wasn't white. Some people question, was he even real? And that's fine. But those of us who think, okay, Jesus is black, okay, so what? So what? He definitely couldn't have been white based on where he was geographically in the history. So yeah, I think it's more so the Hebrew Israelites just talking their nonsense about black people being inferior somehow, and that curse of Ham nonsense they've been talking forever. I think that may be closer to to the reality. Black people, do we love white people? Yeah, I mean that's very true. Black people have never had hostility for white people the way white people have for us, and that's just reality. But yeah, I don't think that's the source of their anger. All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Appreciate that, Black Steel. In the chat, Cheryl says Ogun is greater than Jesus. For some reason, okay, Ogun is greater than Jesus, she says, and then she laughs. The KW Dawn 7 says the Hebrew Israelites have hit their market cap in America. Why are they preaching in Africa to Hamites? That ties in with something I saw Trigger Happy say. Here he says Hebrew Israelites aren't necessarily wrong that the region there was black, but Hebrew Israelites are usually against Africa and have an idea that we were cursed from the beginning. Lastly, Cheryl says the Israelite talk gives credit to when white people say Africans stole Africans. They don't even realize it. That's a good point, too. Oni earlier said, how difficult the language is. So let me hear what Oni has to say while it's still fresh in mind about what his brother was talking about in this video. What are your thoughts?
Nime Farahi. No, I'm joking. What did I? What? Yeah, this guy. Okay, so y'all should have said he was a Hebrew Israelite. But what I want to say is this is why I like Africa. You know, now the context. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not, but the context is. You know, sorry, the clickbait is, you know, oh man, they just want the white man to be the, you know, blah, blah, blah. But like the reality is, you know, like Black Steel said, this is a damn cult. And the thing I like about Africa is that in America, you start a cult, you could do all the fuck shit in 4K. And people are like cool with it, you know, because we expect freedom of speech. We respect freedom of speech. We respect, you know, let the law enforcement handle it. We respect no snitching. You know what I mean? So, you know, you have your, let's not do celebrities, but you have your P. Diddy, you have your Polite, you have your Brother Nature or some shit. These people are sexually abusing women in the community or some shit like that. And we are like, okay, we know this. You know, we talk about it, we whatever, but we don't handle it. Okay? Now, the people in Africa, right, are cut from a different cloth. You're standing around, you know, because like one thing I know about the Hebrew Israelites is that they just harass people on the streets. For what? I don't know. But nobody like steps to them like, hey, stop harassing people. Because if they do, people are going to be like, well, freedom of speech. Don't you respect freedom of speech? You know? But here you have in Africa, it's like that video. I don't know if you guys saw that video. This lady started recording these dudes working. And the dude was like, hey, no recording here. She goes, well, I'm exercising my right. And he goes, you think this is America? And like, I think he swings at her like to punch her or some shit, you know? But it's like, and of course, I'm not advocating, you know, punching women or something. But what I'm saying is that, you know, when you're not in America, you can't do shit that you can get away with in America. These people can harass you on the streets. They could like, for instance, see me walking down in New York and say, hey, you fuck shit idiot with the stupid glasses and blah, blah, blah. You know, go get the haircut. You know, the Bible says don't wear the hair, blah, blah. They can do that, and I'll walk by like, oh, you harassed me. Oh, good job, you know? But like here in Africa, you know, you stand around saying, hey, you fuck shit. They say, what did you say? You know, and then they all just gang up on you. You know what I mean? like, get you the fuck out of this. So it's like, I could appreciate this. Now, as far as this whole, you know, Jesus is, you know, black versus Jesus is white, I'm going to say this. There's two parts of this. One, well, there's three parts. One, I don't think Jesus was real. So I don't go into the Jesus was black or Jesus was white shit, right? But on the other end, I want to say this. Honestly, I'm at the point where it's like, I'm not going to go to somebody's, you know, I'm not going to go slap the Bible out of some guy's hand. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go to some religious people. I mean, I think it would be stupid to go to a bunch of religious people and try to, you know, mess with their religion. Again, we do it because we have freedom of speech in America, and we believe that the American Constitution is going to protect us and all that shit. That's not a reality. I mean, I get like sometimes there's some things about the American experience that spoils us and softens us, you know, and the difference is clear when you get out of America. You know, you're going to Africa and you're talking about, oh man, your religion is stupid, you're stupid, you blah blah, you're blah blah. You start doing that, yeah, you know, you could end up hanging from a tree. Okay, you could end up hanging from a tree, and then you might say, well, why would you hang somebody over this shit? And you know, while I agree, I'm not into that shit. Obviously, who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Like the human experience is not that you have rights. The real world is that you don't have rights. People just tolerate you. You know, and that's the thing that, like I said, I feel like that's one of the main messages for people around the world, but particularly people in America. People just tolerate you. You know, you don't have to be in college. They just tolerate. They just let you go to college. You know, it's like the Boondocks, where the grandpa was like, "Look, you're on allowance. You know, I'm allowing you to do X, Y, Z." You know, you want to stand around on a street corner and talk shit about people who are passing by. Your allowance is rescinded. Okay, and I don't remember the third point I was trying to make, but the other point is, another point is that the Hebrew Israelites, they're bums. They are bums. They are beggars, bums. They're not productive people in society. Obviously, you're standing around harassing people, you know, like basically like if a homeless person was just like doing fuck shit on a street corner or something, and I don't mean to curse, sorry, but a homeless person is doing kind of nonsense on the street corner, in Africa, yeah, they'll take you out. And that's kind of what these Israelite people are, because it's like, what is your, you know, like just you know, as they say, Negroes always knocking on the wrong door, talking to the wrong people, and asking the wrong questions. These guys went to the wrong, like they just went to the wrong people. You know, if we're more docile in America because we respect the freedom of speech, that's one thing. But you just can't pull the same stuff off in other lands and other countries. You know, you could say whatever you want about certain dictators when you're in, like you can say whatever you want about President Trump, right? You go to the wrong country and say the wrong thing about the wrong leader, you will be hanging from a tree. Okay, and that's just the reality. So I think this is actually a positive story. That the people in Africa are just not docile. They're just not dead. They're just not taking what really would be toxic. You know, I don't want to use that word, but toxic or abusive individuals, and they're standing up for, you know, their own beliefs. Even if the beliefs are not right, they're standing up for themselves as men. You know, like, no, you're not going to stand here and harass our women. Sorry, you're not going to tell her to wear pants or some shit, you know, or wear a dress or some shit. You're going to shut up and you're not going to say a word, and that's it.
Interesting take that one. I appreciate that. Anthony was here, but I guess he dipped. In the chat, Trigger Happy says, I kind of hate, this is taking so long. He says, I kind of hate when they will say various African cultures are Israelite when it's more of the reverse. LOL. Shout out to Real Black Gentleman. Haven't seen you too often as of late, but he says, sup to the fam. So appreciate you for coming through, RBG. With that said, let me hear from Buana next. Buana, what's it?
Yeah, it's funny to hear Oni arguments because Oni is obviously gone native, so you know he's always gonna take off. But anyways, what I would say is this: the question is, do the Africans love the white man in Africa? Of course they do, but the Africans, the continental Africans, don't have a monopoly on the white man's love or their love for the white man. That white man's love is extended across most black countries in the Caribbean, of course, in South America, and in North America. So it's to say that is to suggest like, well, they have more love than any other black groups of people around the world. And that's simply not true. That's simply not true. In fact, you will get resistance from a black audience in Africa or Kenya, just as you would in the Bahamas, just as you would in Mississippi, Georgia, all up to the eastern seaboard and throughout the Americas as well. So they don't have this monopoly where they love the white man more so than anyone else. But I would say this: their love is justified, and the reason I would say that is the white man goes to the Africa and he creates this organization called the Red Cross. In the Red Cross, they bring in doctors to help their children, to provide immunization for their children, measles, for free. Right or wrong, you disagree with the immunization or not, they provide these services for people in Africa. Then the white man is go build a hospital, a Christian hospital in in um in Kenya or Uganda and other places, whereas the sisters say Uganda Ogun is greater than Jesus. Well, that may be the case in belief, but in practice, it seemed to me that the Jesus people building establishments like schools, like hospitals, for right or wrong, if you don't agree with the psychology of the school or you don't agree with the medicines given, they have a foothold in the ground because they seem to be providing tangible things where the rest of the people, all the black religious institutions are not doing. Because where is the Ogun hospital or school? Where's the Ogun medication when I get the measles? So of course they have a love for the white man in Africa. Because it seemed to me the white man is doing something. Now the Chinese man doing something in Africa. Everybody can say, "Oh, it seemed to me like they have." It seemed to me it's a common sense thing. If the man is providing tangible aid, help, and support for me, then my appreciation for him will grow. But if you looking at me with your stomach full, wherever you are, sitting away from me, judging me because this man is tangibly providing for me certain things while I sit with my mouth shut, criticizing the man who is doing that, then of course my appreciation for him will grow. The criticism sometimes is unwarranted because people sit in judgment without doing anything or putting any energy behind their criticisms. I could see if you say, well, we building an Ogun hospital, we building an Ogun facility, we building an Ogun medication to provide support for our people, and you're going to the Christians. So now you have a balance. Now you have a balance. But when you ain't doing nothing but giving me religious counsel outside of what the white man Christian people doing in Africa, what do you think the appreciation is? It's a common sense kind of thing. And I ain't saying it's good or bad. In fact, I think it's horrible that my brothers wouldn't raise a hand for me, but everybody else is. That's what it becomes a question in my mind. So of course they have a love for the white man because the black world has not been doing their job, not only in the Western world, but in Africa itself. In Africa itself, there are many talents Africans have within the continent, and they need to exchange these services and goods and all these other kinds of skill sets so the appreciation level could grow. So, but as far as the Hebrew Israelites, it's funny to me because the Hebrew Israelites primarily uses the King James Bible. King James was a homosexual man who had a boyfriend during his lifetime who allowed for William Shakespeare to write the Bible. If people don't know that at this point, man, it's nothing I could do with them. They are a cult. I'm not gonna question the things that they do. I thought that Hebrew Israelites hated Africans. They used to call them Hamites. So why are they in Africa proselytizing to African people? It's almost as ridiculous as when the Latter-day Saint came to my daughter the other day and talking about I'm saying the Latter-day Saints used to teach people that black people would never enter into heaven. And they taught that doctrine for 200 years. And they got rid of that doctrine in 1980. Why are you coming to me with that psychology and nonsense? You don't like black people. The Hebrew Israelites don't like African people. Why are they in Africa? The government inside of Kenya, Ruto, need to get on the ball and start regulating, because this is the reason why China regulates certain ideological groups from coming inside their country to proselytize certain ideas. because it's dangerous to the minds of the African people. You can't open up your doors to every and anyone coming in, including the Christian people. Before the Christian people, I am sure Kenyans had their own religion first. Before Islam, because Islam is in Kenya, the Kenyan people had their religion first. When the white man provided millet to the African Kenyan to the Kenyan people, and the government is not providing food for the people, who do you think the appreciation will grow for? Who do you think? It's just, to me, it's just an evidentiary thing. So, like I say, man, if you don't get on the ball and you are creating a void, and people appreciation level will grow for the people who are actually doing for your people if you ain't doing it. That's what I think. But I appreciate the thing, Koku. I'll leave it there, brother. I'll leave it there.
Buana, why? I'm sorry. White people don't get credit for cleaning up a mess they made. I'm sorry.
Black Steel. While I agree with that comment, most what they say, the population of the African continent is not above 30. Their memory is not that long about the travesties that was committed inside of these African countries. They only know history starting from now, just like many African Americans and Caribbean people. Their memory don't go that far back. So they only gonna look at the person who is doing something for them right about now. That vitriol and anger is extended to people who have lived on the planet long enough to understand certain things. You know what I mean? A 20-year-old African man who is hungry, he is going to the first person who's providing results for him. Not the person, even if the person who created the problem, even if his grandparents created the problem, he is going to the person who's going to solve the problem first. You know, that's just how it works, brother. I mean, well, I may be wrong. I'll leave it there, Coco. I'll leave it.
No, I think that's important.
Oni, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say that. I think that's important. You know, what Buana's saying. You know, we underestimate the role of the provider in the household. You know, the reality is this, and this is probably an unfortunate truth. And this is why, you know, we black men have to get our shit together. But the reality is that if you are the provider in the household, you can get away with a lot of shit. You understand? You can get away with a lot of shit. And we just have to think about our fathers, especially when they were providers, and, you know, really question, didn't they get away with a lot of shit? You know? Now, when you are in a provider, and this is where a lot of black women, you know, have trouble with us as black men, when you are in a provider, you can't pull off half the shit that you think you could pull off. You know? So, like, if you're the provider, for instance, right, you can walk over to the boys, slap them over their head and say you did some fuck shit. I mean, oh my gosh, I keep saying that word. I don't know. All right, you did something wrong. But if you're not the provider, you go to the little boys and you try to do something, you tell them what you want wrong. No, if the mother is the provider, she's gonna tell you, why are you all serious now? Why don't you go get a job? Type energy. And she won't be unreasonable. But what I'm saying is that, you know, when we are talking about this white man, right? I'm not saying I've ever seen a white man who's a provider in Africa, but I'm just going by what Buana was saying, right? When we see this white man, because he's basically the provider in America, right? But when we see this white man, he's in that provider position, and then we, you know, as more informed people might be like, hey, but he's doing all this other stuff, right? We're acting like battered wives and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's how people respond to, the real circumstance of you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And not just that, you know, because like I said, I really like the Ptahhotep book. Even Ptahhotep is saying, you know, this is ancient times. This is before the white man had power, ancient times, right? He's saying, look, if you're at the table of somebody great, shut up, do what they want. You know, don't talk until spoken to, and only talk about what they want to talk about, right? Because it's their generosity that's going to keep your family fed, you know? And so, you know, if you extrapolate that concept to, you know, like, you know, our households, when we as black men are providers, we get away with a lot of stuff. Okay. And moreover, if you're as a white man on a national level is providing stuff, like you have this stupid medical hospital, okay, you also did some other nonsense, right? But we need that hospital. So again, you know, obviously it's a bad position to have somebody else providing for you, right? Especially if you're a man, right? If you're a woman, it's an okay position if the man is a good man. But if you're a man and another man's providing for you, you have a personal problem. And I think that we as African people, or particularly like in America, because I don't really see it. I don't really see any white people in Africa like that, like where I'm at. But if that's your situation, yeah, you have a problem. And what I could say, because I think we brought up the Chinese, what the Chinese do in Africa, from what I can see, is they offer really cheap goods that you can resell at a profit. You know, so that they offer wholesale and you could do retail. You know, and that's just one of the things that's just the reality of the planet, right? That the manufacturing countries offer wholesale and you can use that as an opportunity economically to go retail. If we were to just say, hey, you know what, F the Chinese, we're not going to do anything with the Chinese and we're going to so on and so forth, you can say that, you can do that, but what is your manufacturing capacity? And honestly, although I'm very happy in Africa, you know, one of the things that makes me unhappy is the reality that I'm not a manufacturer. You know, I'm not a manufacturer. I'm trying to figure out ways to be a manufacturer, be a this, be a that, but I am not a manufacturer. And that hurts me because if I were to say, you know, I remember Bit of Medicine had an interview with this brother. I think it's Maj, no, not Maj, some brother. He's in Senegal or something. And the question, you know, it still sticks with me, where he said, where Koku asked, why don't we drill up the oil, the offshore oil, on our own? And the guy was like, if we could, we would, but the Chinese own that machinery. You know, like we don't have that giant ship that can drill oil off the coast of Senegal. You know, and it really, you know, puts into perspective the whole I want to say finance problem that we have as a people, as well as the whole industrial problem. So yeah, I think we have to. I think what Bwana was saying about the notion of, hey, what this white man is providing, that's a really important sentiment, because I can say that even appears in households where, yeah, the wife might have an issue with the husband, and people might tell the wife, hey, look, you know, I'm not trying to say it's me, right? but people might tell the wife, hey, look, that's a provider. What are you doing? You know? And that's kind of, I feel like that might be subconsciously how a lot of black people are approaching white people. And I mostly, I would say in America, but really if it's an international phenomenon, it might be that way. Like, yeah, if you say, I don't like these Chinese people, and they stop selling their Chinese goods, a lot of the retail economy that centers around reselling Chinese goods collapses. And the people are not going to be happy about that, because a lot of people are making their living off of reselling Chinese manufacturing. That's it.
Yeah, much of what, thank you for that, Oni. Much of what Oni came in with there is what I was going to say, but what I was going to add is the question of, yes, this white man is giving you a sandwich when you're hungry, but is that enough to cover some of the atrocities, not only historically but currently? And I think Trigger Happy made mention of it. Like, almost all, he says, also most of these institutions commit high levels of sexual assault and molestation. So my thing is this: a little white bread sandwich when I'm hungry is cool, but you essaying and raping my mother and her mother and my sisters, that's not that cool to me at all. And you know, where's the line? So what Buana said is actually true. It's like, yeah, these guys come in and these guys are the face of solving a immediate problem. But I think what gets lost in the sauce is your families, especially the women and children, are receiving irreparable damage for this little white bread sandwich that they're giving you. So that's something that we have to consider as well in the discussion. Shout out
Also,
to real quick. Shout out to Provide Triggers for Evolution, who's out there in the chat intermittently, as she put it. And shout out to our brother D Web from the Harsh Rally podcast, who says, "Peace, fam. Hope everyone is well. Peace to the panel." So thank you guys for that. Black Seal, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, um, the white man don't provide for his own family, right? It's white people have the greatest rebanding in history. It is truly mind-boggling to me how we put white people in such a positive light, right? How anybody could see what the United States did to Libya, what they did to Somalia, right? And think that white people are providing. These white people don't want to provide for themselves. White people had to literally pass laws to keep from working their own children, not black children, from working white children to death, right? So it always boggles my mind. And it lets me know that as a conscious person in the conscious community, we have to do a better job of educating our people, right? Because there's no way anybody with a rudimentary knowledge of history would ever see white people in a positive light. You can look into what's going on in the US right now, okay? You can look at literally the world wars that started strictly by white people. We call them world wars. They were murder orgies. 50 million, 60 million people died. But yet we're happy because, oh, the white man was nice to us and he made us a hospital. Who destroyed your hospital? Who brought these diseases to your country? Who steals your natural resources and impoverishes your people? And then all of a sudden, he gives a couple dollars of aid. And oh, look at the white man. We got to do a better job educating our people because that is embarrassing. That's embarrassing that we don't know who our true enemy is, no matter where you live at in the world. And I think that's our number one problem. And I also remember reading that in The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, that we got to understand who our enemy is. It's crazy how the United States is literally sitting up here banning countries, revoking visas from African nations, and yet we can still see white people in a positive light. That is insane to me. We got to do a better job.
Yeah, I think, as far as like us doing a better job, that's why I think it's really important for us to also, come to terms with psychology. You know, I feel like, not I feel like, but one of the things that this white boy does is like he studies psychology. He studies animals. He studies creatures, if you will, or whatever, right? Biology, so on and so forth. And in those studies, you realize a lot of people are living in the present. And so some of us may live in the past, right? And by living in the past, we like we're like what Black Steel just said. If you study history, if you follow history, if there are a lot of like those people who do study history, like Malcolm X said, those are the best people, right? Marcus Garvey said like if you're able to read, if you're able to write, those are excellent qualities. Most people are not on that level. So when you're doing this thing, like mass psychology with this, which is what this white boy is doing, right? He has you in the present. He's like one thing we should probably notice is that if you watch a lot of programs, very, very rarely are they going over history, right? Very rarely are they are they trying to inform you about what happened in the past, right? But they're really trying to manipulate you in the present. And that's the thing that we have to come to terms with, that realistically you can like if you are impacting somebody in the present moment, you got it. You won. So, what Black Steel was saying about, hey, look what they're doing in Libya. Look what they're doing and so on and so forth. If in the present moment you are in, let's say, I don't want to say Sudan because they went to Sudan later, right? But all right, but let's pretend, right? If you're in Sudan and they're doing stuff in Libya, you don't care. You should care. This is what the messaging of Pan-Africanism is about. You should care. You should have a united front. You should point out to, you should know your enemy. But the reality is that if you're not, if you do not have that ideology, right, then you're looking at, if you are looking at things on the most basic, almost primitive level of what is in my present circumstance, right? What are my present interests? How am I going to get my daily bread, right? If that's your concern, and that's the concern of 90% of people, right? This white boy, yeah, he's going to win by default. As long as he's studying psychology and how to manipulate people and mass manipulate people, and he understands, hey, look, people are not studying. These are, for instance, one thing I could say in Africa, because again, I don't speak the language or whatever, but I could walk by this storefront, right? And there are these people who do not work there in front of the store, sitting down every day, all day. Okay? They're not sitting down reading at some moments. Like most people, I want to say 90%. Matter of fact, I'll tell you guys this. There was this conscious brother on Twitter. He was showing off his bookshelf, his book collection, like all the books that he has, all the books that he owns. This was about 5 books. Okay? It was about 5 books. He was showing off 5 books. I was like, what the, this is a lot of books. 5 books is a lot of books for most people. Okay? 5 books is and when we realize, hey, 5 books is a lot of books for most people, this is why this white boy could win. Because if we're going by, hey, look, if I'm Black Steel and I read, 500, 700, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 books, right? He has an advantage over most people, right? But he has a knowledge base that most people don't have. And if he's looking at this other person and saying, why are you not acting on the knowledge of 10,000 books, right? When they have 3 books, in their life, it's like, well, it's partly because they had 3 books in their entire life. And that's all I would say.
Appreciate that, Oni. Speaking of books, so let me just put this in here really quick. Make sure you guys check out the community posts I put up on YouTube here. Please support the special effort of the book, The Watoto, Born in the New Free Communities. Make sure you guys check it out. I got a copy the other day. It's pretty good. A lot of symbolism, African symbolism, deep meaning in it. I'll talk about it more at a later date, but you guys make sure to try to support that book as much as you can. With all of that said, and with everything everyone had to say in the chat, Jackadero, take it away, man.
I'm still laughing. All right, I'll give you guys. So Buru Kange, it's pronounced Buru Kange, by the way, and I think it's from a meme. But anyways, Buru Kange means lizard. Lizards, typically in Kenyan households, especially in like the major cities like Nairobi, you don't want them around. So to be beaten like a Buru Kange is a pretty big statement, because it's usually reserved for thieves. Like, hey, like I'll beat you like a lizard. But I'm laughing because Hebrew Israelites don't know how to read the fucking room. Oh man, they don't know how to read the room, and that's one thing that I think is just common with Americans. When I've traveled, I've been to Mexico, I've been to France, I've been to Ethiopia, and like one of the things that's just common with like the American narrative is that like Americans don't know how to read a room. Like they'll be loud and obnoxious anywhere in the world, and then they'll fuck around and find out. So I'm just laughing because Hebrew Israelites like continue to play into that stereotype about Americans. Uh, so one of the things that Hebrew this group of Hebrew Israelites should have known, assuming that this was a video from recently, is that Kenya is having a revolution. Believe it or not, no matter what news outlet that you guys look at and listen to and read, Kenya is going through a revolution, and it's led by Gen Z. What is the revolution? Back in 2024, I'd say starting in May, there was a finance bill that was to be introduced through the government. That finance bill was going to tax an already financially exhausted population. The population of Kenya was already feeling like Ruto and his administration was taxing the common people already. Well, what was going to be introduced with this finance bill was going to be taxes not only on oil for cooking and fuel, but also common daily items like, I believe, tampons and diapers for babies. Well, right before the finance bill was to be voted by the government, Gen Z led several major protests, and one of them, I believe it was June 26th, if I can't remember right. If memory doesn't serve me correct, I believe it was June 26th of last year. And they led a protest that I believe I heard the number was 2 million strong, and they marched their way to the parliament and they started burning the parliament. I just want to like have you guys understand, like, unlike the United States where its citizens took over the Capitol, they didn't burn the Capitol, the building on Capitol Hill. These Kenyans, again, majority Gen Z, they went and burned the parliament. They burned the parliament. So tensions are already high because of that. Number two, Kenya in the past 5 years has been on its way to get rid of its cults. Most people don't know this, but Kenya has had, man, since I'd say the 90s, it's had a tough time dealing with cults, because oftentimes when a cult is revealed, people have already either A, killed themselves or have had homicides. One in most recent time is the Shakahola. It was a religious cult. I think like they were an apocalyptic Christian cult. And the leader said that his ideology was that if you starve yourself for, I think, 26 days, you'll receive eternal salvation. And so when it was discovered, it was because people or neighbors that were close to the church started smelling like an unpleasant smell for several days. So police were called and they started uncovering that bodies were being found buried behind the church. I think up to date, they've have found over 230 bodies. 230 bodies. 230 bodies. Like, just think about that. 230 people were convinced to starve themselves. So Kenya is on edge because of, again, Gen Z is leading a revolution in Kenya that's anti-government, and they're really anti-Ruto. Two, Kenya has had a big problem with trying to get rid of cults and their leaders. So they're looking at the Hebrew Israelite, not necessarily and saying like, hey, we don't like what you're saying about the depiction of Christ, but we believe that you're a cult because you're coming off as a cult. It's so funny that Oni brings up that in America, you can pretty much just get on a street corner and say whatever, and people will pretty much pass you off because either they think that you're crazy and they just are like, hey, I'm too busy for your bullshit, or because somebody else will come and say, I have the right to free speech. Whatever the case may be, in Kenya, people are already on edge because their pockets are starving because of finances, and they feel that they're the next, or they have a family member or a friend that is next up to be in the newest cult, and they don't want that. So read the room. Like, whatever country that you visit, read the room. It will save your life. These people are very, very fortunate, especially this guy that's on the screen. His friend that was, I didn't translate this other part, but he was saying that the boulders that were thrown in, that hit his friend, his colleague in the face, they're lucky that it's only marks and scratches that came about. Bro, some of these boulders, I always said that Kenyans can be the best baseball players of all time because the way that they throw stones, especially after some soccer games, if it hits you, Omara, hey, bro, concussions and contusions, in my best Baltimore accent, contusions. So read the room, read the room, read the room. This is something that people say that is a common characteristic with the socially inept, the awkward people, is that they don't pick up on social cues. There can be an argument said that maybe, just maybe, people that join the Hebrew Israelites are not the most socially aware people, and they're socially awkward because they don't know how to read the room. Now, I might be just watching clickbait on YouTube or social media by seeing examples of Hebrew Israelites yelling at people, especially on the East Coast. Maybe Koku, maybe you can tell me better in Brooklyn. Like, do they actually do that? Do they actually just, shout at random people and tell people, what you're doing will lead you to hell, and hey, like, you're from a cursed people. If that is true, then a lot can be said about America. But at least in Kenya, trust and believe in this current time, you're dealing with people that are already fed up with the government and its president. And then two, you're dealing with people that have watched either their friends or family members or a friend of a friend be found buried behind a church cult. So again, so I laugh all to say that, like, yeah, you don't want to be beaten like a Buru Kanga. You don't want to be beaten like a lizard. And they can all be avoided if you just read the room. Read the room.
Yeah, the Hebrew Israelites in New York here, they are shouting, wearing swords in their waist and all that type of bullshit, and a tunic. And yeah, if you pass by with a certain look, or like if you have locks and stuff like that, they might try to get on you about that stuff. So yeah, they do some berating on the streets of New York. Real quick, Jacadero, Trigger Happy had this question.
Yeah.
Is what's going on in Kenya, is it a organized, quote unquote, scientific revolution, or is it more of a mobilization? Is there any effort to replace the government with better leadership, or is there just constant mobilization? Which one is it?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak personally because this is my own personal opinion because of the conversations that I have with my cousins that are on the ground back home, and my cousins being majority Gen Z. This is a Gen Z movement that they've said, quote unquote, on several different occasions, that we are tribeless, tribeless, politicless, meaning like we don't belong to any particular party, and we are, I can't remember the other part, but those two things. So they want to dismantle Ruto's government, but they are not in favor of any Gen Z that is rubbing shoulders currently with Ruto's government to be a bridge between the Gen Z and Ruto's current government. And I say this as a personal reply because I feel that it's wasteful, because it's not like there's just a void that could be that could be filled by one of you guys. But they feel that with this movement being tribeless and not affiliated with any political party, and they say that their leader is the Kenyan Constitution because they don't want one of them being sold off to the government, being bought. And because they feel like in the past, any person or any group of people that was pushed as the face and or the voice of a movement was always just bought by the government, and or they were just killed.
Okay, thanks for that. D-Web had a different take on the Hebrew Israelites, being from Chicago. He said, having been around Hebrew Israelites based out of Chicago, I never saw the Power Ranger suits and yelling at people. Those brothers wore business suits and studied the Bible all day. So I guess there's regional differences on how they carry themselves. Cheryl says Africa has black cult groups that be funded by the West and Europe to cause discord, though. America doesn't have that because America is headquarters. Shout out to Brother Bakari, BBN Black Business Network, saying peace and Black African power. So shout out to everyone there. Is there any last thoughts or follow-up points anyone wants to make?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to answer one of Black Steel's statements because Black Steel asked the question. He doesn't understand how is it that Black people have the love and admiration that Black people do around the world. And I just want to say this. I agree with many of the things that Black Steel says. But when me and Black Steel speak, we speaking as college graduates who are professional men in our skill or whatever. We understand context, we understand history, we understand many kinds of other things. Okay? Now, I would say this. The average salary, upper middle, the average salary they say in America for Black people is around $40,000 to $50,000, teetering around there, average. In the world, upper class, or what is considered upper class, is $30,000. $30,000. Okay? A man in Kenya, and Jacadero could dispute this if he wishes, or correct me. The average salary per year is 7,000 US dollars. In Haiti, it's much less, and it goes, in other places. Now, if you look at a person from the United States, a Black man from America, without context, they would say Black man in America, or when I say man, I mean man or woman, is the most educated and the wealthiest person, Black person, in terms of the Black world, has the highest standard of living per capita, right? A person in Haiti or a person in Kenya would look at that and say, how could you not love the white man? Because he gave you a standard of living that is better to go through him in that context. Make a certain amount of money. Most people are not, because I live in the United States, so I understand context. But someone in Haiti and someone in Kenya and someone in various parts of the Black world look at that, well, how could you not love the white man for providing you the things that you wouldn't get in our countries run by Black governments? And as the brothers say, there needs to be some sophistication and education around the world. We need to get on the ball as Black men to provide these kinds of things. I think the internet is helping with that. But the reality is, you may say from what your standpoint, I don't understand why there's this love and appreciation for white men. Whereas someone else from somewhere else standing at a different position may say, well, how could you not? How could you not? Because look where I am, run and controlled by governments, by people who look just like me. So there's nuances to the conversation sometimes, man. It's just nuances, man. And I like I say, on the face of it, I agree with Black Steel, but I would just like to create nuances so people could understand better the dynamics of what's actually going on based off of where a person may be. But I'll leave it there. I'll leave it.
If I can say, I want to say two things.
Hold on. Let me see if Black wants to respond first.
I mean, I guess on the outside looking in,
Okay, I
you
guess
can.
Black still doesn't.
No, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I guess on the outside looking in, I kind of understand what Blonde is saying. But the reality is that most black people in America ain't really doing that hot. Again, people like to look at the top 10% and make that the representative of all of us, right? But most black Americans ain't out here rolling in dough. And there are some benefits to living in the heart of the empire, right? If if you're living in the imperial core, we do get some of the benefits of living in the empire, like you mentioned, higher standards of living, but we also get more scrutiny. We also get a lot more repression, as only would attest to living in Africa as opposed to living in America. So there's trade-offs to that. But I think you just got it close to my point of how we have to do a better job of educating our people, because we have to understand that, yeah, there might be some benefits, but the negatives outweigh the cost of that. And I don't think that you can look at what's going on in, like, for example, the Sahel states, and look at how France has done those people for almost 100 years and be like, oh, okay, yeah, but white people though. Like, are these African people not aware of how the Europeans have done everything possible to destroy Haiti, to just everything possible they've done to undermine African people? Like I was saying, we got to do better by educating our people, and we got to create networks of support so that way we don't have to depend on the European for improvement.
Okay, if I
Tony?
can. Yeah, two things. One, I want to say, I don't remember if the Hebrew Israelites were harassing me, but I remember one time when I was younger, I was walking by a Nation of Islam guy. I think he was trying to sell me the final call, and I was like, nah, I'm good. And he was like, you got them locks for nothing, blah, blah, blah. started telling me to cut my locks off because I ain't really conscious type shit. And I'm telling you, I was a younger man, and I did want to, brawl after that. But I mean, obviously, like I said, you're in America, you're not randomly brawling with, people on the street. So I don't remember the Hebrew. I knew one, matter of fact, I think it was a Moor who would go around, asking people, what's your nationality? And then whatever. And he actually was chasing me to get on his YouTube videos. I think he even has me on some of his YouTube videos, just randomly. But that there's a lot of that, aggressive harassment that maybe it's a Eastern thing, but it's there. But as far as what Buana was talking about, the wealth disparity that Black Americans have, we have to put two things. Like, one, it's contextual, So Black Americans absolutely make way more money than most Black groups on the planet, right? But most Black groups have a much lower cost of living. You know what I mean? So it balances out, and like this guy was telling me the last time I went to Jamaica, he was like, the dream is to get some American money and live in like Jamaica, or get some American money and live in Africa type stuff, right? And so that's kind of like what I'm doing. But what I want to put into context is that the people, like I know this person here in Africa who's like, their monthly salary, right, is 450,000 Tanzanian shillings, right? 450,000, and their rent is 250,000 Tanzanian shillings, right? And that, according to my wife, is actually a stupid high rent. Like, they're not really renting that high, because and now this person, now 250,000 Tanzanian shillings, what is that? $100 US. 450,000 Tanzanian shillings is less than $200 US. And if people know in America, you could, especially in New York, you can get $20 an hour working at a fast food restaurant. Like, if you're working at McDonald's flipping burgers, you can get $20 an hour, which means, after 8 hours, you're making $160 before tax. So obviously you're going to get taxed. You're making $100 a day. 2 days, you could make as much as people are making in a month working in Africa, right? But you're that $20 is not going to get you much in New York City, whereas in Africa, that $20 is going to get you a whole month of good living, of a good house, good home, television, internet, unlimited internet, all that kind of stuff. So, a lot of and that kind of goes to Bonner's point as well about the reality that people are looking at America like this is an opportunity because again, one of the troubles that we have in Africa is that our economies are weak. And part of the reason why the economy is weak is because we are not manufacturing. And part of the reason why we're not manufacturing is not just because this white boy, right? But also because we are not manufacturing. So like I said, that's one of the things that gets me depressed is that hey, I'm not a part of the solution. You know what I mean? I want to be a part of the solution. It's easier said than done. A lot of a lot of a lot of our experience is easier said than done. And at the end of the day, a lot of people see, hey, you know what? This white boy doesn't realize the value of his dollar. This white boy does not realize the value of his money. And again, the white man is not going to value that $20. He's not going to value $200. You tell a white man this costs him $200 to get, this. He's not like, oh my gosh, that's $200. He's like, shit, boy, that's $200. That's what it's the economic disparity on the currency level that's really screwing us over on a social level. And that's what I was saying.
Appreciate that, Oni. In the chat, just read some comments. Cheryl would like to know what AFRICOM's role in all of these cults and groups is. She feels they're caught up in it. Trigger Happy 262 Plus says education is what pulls away the layer of illusion that people have about the system they live in as a benevolent, self-corrective system when it's a system that caused all the problems they deal with. Well said, Trigger. Cheryl says South Africans aren't so enthralled by whites because they live near them and have to interact with them to a certain extent. She says in Philly, the Hebrew Israelites are aggressive AF. So I guess it's closer to New York. Trigger says I'm going to make it a shoot the breeze topic. But recently, Elon Musk co-signed a tweet that said if you don't manufacture drones as a country, you will be a vassal state. That's interesting. Cheryl says get a remote job in America and move to Tanzania. Lastly, Trigger says Huey P. Newton kind of talked about this with intercommunalism as well. But manufacturing weapons will be so important. Hopefully, AES gets that done. All right, good comments from the chat. I appreciate it. Keep it rolling. Good commentary from the panel, as always. Is there any other last thoughts on this prompt?
One thing, my run-ins with the Hebrew Israelites, they've been quite aggressive. But I think it was 2020, 2021, I went to a protest, especially after they had murdered George Floyd. And the Hebrew Israelites were on the side by the police station, screaming Bible verses into loudspeakers. And when the cops let out the tear gas, me and my girl was choking, coughing and everything. And I could still hear them talk about, we are a chosen people. Deuteronomy, all this gas was in my face. It was just something I remember. I just remember hearing Bible verses as I'm being choked by tear gas at a protest. All their prayers didn't do anything for us. So that's just something I just want to bring up.
Well. Thank you for that, Black Steel. Haven't seen the brother gas him up in a long time. He says Dred Scott, Plessy v. Ferguson all occurred at the same time. African ethnic nation states, Zulu, etc. Good to see you gas him up, by the way. He goes and says Africa and her diaspora are playing checkers and the Mzungu is playing 3D chess. That's a good way.
Wait. How are we gonna look at Donald Trump and think these people playing 3D chess? They're like a bunch of pigeons knocking over the piece of shit on the board. They're not playing chess.
Maybe outside of Donald Trump then. good discussion. Let's go for time's sake. Let's go. Should be topic number 3. Okay. Should be topic number 3 says a sister asks Chat GPT what would happen if all black people left the US for the motherland. So this came with a attachment that takes us to X again. Make sure you guys could see it. Yeah. Let me just say while I'm doing this, it's probably I didn't restart my computer, blah blah blah, and so it's being choppy. But this tweet comes from Shango's Wrath. It says, "What would happen to America if all Black Americans left America to return to Africa?" So it's a little over a 3-minute video. We'll watch it and then we'll discuss.
So, since there's so many of y'all on here talking about go back to Africa, you should go, blah, 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 I decided to ask ChatGPT, Chat, what would happen if all Black Americans left the U.S. and returned to Africa? And one thing ChatGPT do not do is lie, baby. So this is what ChatGPT said. This is food for thought for everybody who's saying go back to Africa. So first, Black Americans make up 14% of the U.S. population and contribute significantly to healthcare, education, sports, entertainment, government. And a sudden departure would create significant labor shortages. That's 1. 2, Black Americans contribute over $1.7 trillion annually to the U.S. economy. A departure like that would create a sudden loss of economic power. 3, Black-owned businesses, which employ millions of Americans, would shut down or relocate, shifting the wealth to whatever country all of us went to. Number 4. Now this one gonna really piss you off. Loss of cultural influence. Black Americans, and I quote, Black Americans have shaped U.S. culture through jazz, hip-hop, and blues, fashion, language, and sports. Their departure would significantly alter America's cultural identity. Of course, we know that there will be a shift in elections, particularly for the Democratic Party. There won't be a need for NAACP and Black Line and innovation. Blacks foster creativity and innovation. The loss of racial diversity could slow technological advances. See, y'all ancestors ain't tell y'all how sick y'all was. See, y'all before y'all found us, y'all was fighting each other. See, ain't nobody passed that information on to y'all. Y'all don't know about all that. See, our people passed information on. Y'all people didn't. Y'all wanted to be lost in translation, but we know. We know.
All right. Yeah, I saw this. I thought it was an interesting conversation as well. I'm very curious to hear what my panelists and the chat has to say. And I already see D-Web says low vibrational dribble. Black people simply recycle the same dollar given to them mostly by the white man who signs their checks. Once she said Chat GPT doesn't lie, I would have kept scrolling. That was the one thing that caught me too, as well, D-Web. When she said Chat GPT, I'm like, yo, y'all know this stuff is programmed stuff, right? And even the responses I have a suspicion that that particular response is based on the climate of like social media right now and the ADOS and FBA, blah, blah, blah. But I'll be curious to hear what the rest of you have to say. Oni in the chat says, oh no, America might suffer. So let me start with Oni. Oni, what are your thoughts on all of it?
Yeah, that's America might suffer. That's why I said I can't, like, it really comes back to ideology. What is your ambition? Because even when you think about it, who was this video directed to? This is a Black woman making a video for white people, telling them, hey, if we leave, you guys might suffer. That's why you shouldn't want us to leave. It's so bad because, her toning makes you think, oh, maybe she's trying to talk with Black people, right? She's all, y'all, blah, 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 whatever. You're like, that's what we would say with each other. She's talking to white people. Because she's like, when y'all tell us to blah, blah, blah. So yeah, this is pathetic. America might suffer. That's why you shouldn't leave. Whose side are you on? And it reminds me, a long time ago, before ADOS was a thing, I said, hey, look, if we're calling ourselves African Americans, right? If we're told to go to war with Africa, right? Whose side are we going to go on? Whose side will we be on? And this is this woman is communicating, I'm on America's side. Okay? She's communicating, she's on America's side. And some of us should really question, what? Like earlier when Black Steel was telling us, hey, America's bad, or you should know America's bad, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we know. But do the American people know? Does Yvette Carnell know? Does Tarita Sheed, does the ADOS people, does the FBA people, do they know America's bad? Because if they don't know, and I know, and I'm going to them like, oh, right? I'm going to be in trouble because this woman is telling you, hey, look, the reason why I don't leave America is because I want America to be better. I want America to have medical, advances. I want America's economy to function. I want Americans to be entertained. I want to serve this white man ad infinitum. That's where the problem is. So, obviously, I also agree. ChatGPT is not an authority on anything. ChatGPT is a LLM, I think, a large language model. That's all it is. It's legit. It's not even AI. It is a large language model. It's a glorified search engine based off of what people are searching. I'm not saying it can't be helpful, but it is not. It's not real. Like it's not a machine. Like it's not an intelligence. So asking it anything is just asking what are the results for whatever I'm searching. What are common results for whatever I'm searching. This is not an entity that can think. It's just an entity that can put sentences together. Okay. But you also have to realize that there's a lot of individuals who are just like ChatGPT. They are not entities that can think. They're just individuals that can put sentences together. And I can't find the European I read who said that, but I know Carlos Cook said that. And like I said, there was a European I know who said, hey, look, 1 out of 1,000 people can read, and 1 out of 1,000 of those people can think. And he was talking about Europeans. He was like, to be able to think is 1 in a million. Like the group we have here, right, is a very, very rare occurrence for the human experience. Most individuals cannot think, cannot read, do not read, right? We are, individuals who can think, who can read. We're different, right? But this individual right here is hearing something like, hey, This nation that enslaved my ancestors, that keeps me back, that shoots my children, that lynches people, that does this, so on and so forth, that deprives me, all that kind of stuff. This person would suffer if I leave the country. Therefore, I should tell these white people to stop telling me to leave the country because I'm really helping them out, even though they're a destructive force on this planet. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with. That's it.
Well stated, Oni. Well stated. Real Black Gentleman echoed your a glorified search engine bit. KW7 says Black Americans and Africans in the diaspora sit in the belly of the beast, but refuse to give it E. coli. Good comment there, at least to me as a biologist, I guess. I fully expected her to echo some FBA rhetoric at the end. Quote unquote, we are indigenous. It was 10 seconds away. Man. With that said, let me hear from Jack on this one. Jack Adara, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. She's asking about what would happen if Black Americans were to leave to Africa. In my opinion, I feel like if there is a such thing as multiple or alternate universes, 9 out of 10 times it would end up like Liberia. And if those that don't know, Liberia for I think up until the 80s was ruled by the descendants of the African Americans that returned back to Africa. So there'd be a lot of fighting. And I I say this and I hope that I'm not taken, that my statements aren't taken as being anti-African American. Absolutely not. No, that's not what I mean. But I do mean that where you have, I'll give you an example. I used to have a friend that growing up, I thought it was my dad didn't like my friend. Well, I got to get older. I became older and I got to realize that it wasn't the friend that my dad didn't like. My dad saw the behaviors of his parents, that the African Americans would bring the behaviors of Americans, the American behavior. We just got done with a prompt that dealt with the Hebrew Israelites and how they were treated after explaining what they were reading and interpreting in the Bible of the depiction of Christ. Well, I feel that a lot of fighting would happen because the behaviors from the Black Americans would be very foreign to those in Sierra Leone, Somalia, Congo. So if it were to happen, I don't think it would be as smooth as what some people would like to think. You know, we like to think and we like to romanticize that, you know, if everybody returned back to the continent, we would right away unite, gather up, and sing Kumbaya. It's great. That's an awesome way to think of it. I don't want to take away from that, you know, impressionable mind. But if I had to put money on it, I feel like the first 100 years there would be a lot of fighting, because again, you would have people that would come across people that would, again, they've behaved how they've behaved this entire time, and you're bringing it to a new country. And in most of the time, you would bring it to countries where they're pretty conservative in their views. I know that for the most part, most African Americans aren't or are not progressive. They're pretty conservative, right? You know, they go to church. They believe that marriage is between a man and woman. They at least they don't, from what I see, they don't try to project abortion, you know, those things. Well, the same thing in Africa, but I do know that there are, you know, a growing number of younger African Americans that are part of the LGBTQ, and don't believe that a man is necessary. Well, you're going to African countries that are like, hey, we're not with that shit. We're not with that shit. We will chase you out. We'll do something about that. So again, it's good to have these thoughts that everything would be cohesive at the beginning, but yeah, just like Liberia, you would have people that would feel like they're being oppressed by these new Africans.
Interesting points there, Jack. It reminded me that last week I was going to bring a topic. No, I think I saw it during the week. Um, a Black American, a Black equals African American woman. It's somewhere in the West, in West Africa. I want to say it's Ghana, and she was looking to purchase some land to make it exclusive, like build a subdivision. Continental Africans were kind of up in arms about that. Bringing that gated community type thing that you find in a lot of these colonized places. And the Africans, they had a problem. But one of the problems I had with that too was, man, y'all got white folks with gated communities over there. Are y'all making all that stink about that? So, but I understand Jack's point that there'll be some infighting going on. It won't be as smooth as we would like to think it would be. But this is why I say, personally, and you guys have been saying it all night, this is why we got to have an education that prepares you to go back. You see, Oni is a good candidate to go back to Africa. He prepared himself out here. We talked about guys owning 5 books versus guys like Oni and the rest of us here who probably have 100 or so or more books in their library. You know what I mean? So that's the issue. The issue is if you're gonna go back as a Black American or an African American, then you're already in a problem. You have to go back as an African, but that will require you to do the work out here before you get there. Just saying. I see some comments. Trigger, the situation was in Ghana. Yeah, I thought so. It was in Ghana. All right, so that was Jack Cadero. I got Oni before. Let me get Black Steel next. Black Steel, what say you?
So, to her question, right, what would happen if Black people would leave America? I think that she's coming from, because there's been a lot of things going on recently. Those of you who are outside the country may not know, about how they're getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What that means is Black people. So many of the accomplishments of Black Americans are attempting to be erased in education. They're talking about taking money from the Smithsonian, from the Black American Museum, because it teaches anti-American ideas. They took down some stuff from Arlington National Cemetery about some of the contributions of Black soldiers and whatnot. Harriet Tubman, something happened where Harriet Tubman took away some stuff off the website about them. But so I guess her saying this is a response to the attempts by our new administration to minimize the contributions that Black Americans have done to the United States. But I just kind of want to answer her question. So she talks about what if Black people were to leave. So first of all, I gotta say, if Black people were to get up en masse and immigrate to outside the United States, white people would have a fit, right? They would block the roads. They keep the planes from taking off. They would have a fit. There's an event in history called the Exodus of 1879. So this takes place after Reconstruction, after the Civil War. And many Black people had been reduced to the state of sharecropping. Now they were still in the South, most of them, and they were giving out land out west. America what they call the Homestead Act. They take land taken from Native Americans and they give it out to peasants and farmers and whatnot. So for the low price of maybe $5, you could get a couple acres of land and start your own homestead. So many, not a lot, but some black people decided, hey, we had enough of this. We had enough of these white people torturing us and terrorizing us. We're going to leave the South and we're going to start a new life in the West. And a couple made it, but then when it started to be a mass exodus of black people leaving the South, white people would block the roads. they would beat up black people trying to leave, because white supremacy requires someone to look down upon. Dr. Remember, in Yoruba, she talked about the cultural other, right? That Europeans need an escape valve for the levels of endemic violence within their culture. That they need to focus their violence on somebody, because if they do not, that violence will be turned inward and they will destroy themselves. So black people serve as a pressure release valve for the Europeans' aggression and toxic tendencies towards Africa, toward people, right? Not just black people. There's other races of people that they focus on. But black people in particular, there's something, you can always look up the hate crime stats in America, right? And black people, the number of hate crimes directed towards African Americans is almost triple the amount of the next closest group, which happens to be Jewish people. But black people, like 2,000 hate crimes a year. Jewish people, you get like 150. So, and I'm exaggerating here. Somebody could look those stats if they want to. But the number of hate crimes directed towards black people is always triple the amount of the next group, because the European and Western culture needs that release valve of their anger and their deep levels of cultural violence they have within themselves. At one point, if black people tried to leave, again, they weren't even leaving the country. They were just leaving the West. They were just leaving the South, right? And this was like, again, right after slavery, because black people's labor was needed. Because even though slavery had ended, many black people were sharecroppers. They had to work the land. Who was going to harvest the crops? Who was going to do all the dirty work that white people didn't want to do? So the whole idea of black people trying to leave the United States, even if they were, white people would have a fit. They would do everything possible to keep black people in this country. They do not want it. But at the same time, they don't like us, but they don't want us to leave. So that's in a situation where you're in an abusive relationship. I've always compared black people's relationship to the European as that of battered wife syndrome, right? It's really, to me, I feel like it push comes to shove. I think there's some black people who, if they go to Africa, they show out. But I think that over some time, over some generations, once we have been disabused of our notions of whatever superiority we might have because we live in America, I think that we would do just fine. I do. But I do think that white people would probably be willing to go to war if it came down to it, if they meant keeping us here and not losing us to any other country. They don't really want us to leave, because who else are they going to look down upon? Who else are they going to blame their problems on? So because you grew up in a trailer and you got 3 teeth and your kids can't read past a 5th grade level, you can't blame the niggers, right? You can't blame the Mexicans. You got to look at yourself. White society would collapse on itself. Collapse. It would be like one of the, how we see a country collapse on itself. It would be just like that. People eating cats and dogs and fighting in the street. So yeah, I think that the idea of black people leaving the United States, although it's a fun one, is interesting to talk about. Even after the Civil War, again, Abraham Lincoln floated the idea of moving after ending slavery in America. He thought about the idea of having all black people removed to Haiti or Central America. But they told him that basically that they couldn't move black people out fast enough. The birth rate was such that the minute we move somebody out, there's another black person being born. So even that idea, this is at a time where black people maybe numbered about 40 million. There were situations where the United States wanted to buy Cuba from Spain before Cuba became a country and use it as a dumping ground for black people. There have been many attempts to remove black people from America. But they all fail because deep down, white people don't really want to see us leave. They need us. They need us to vent their rage on. They need us to blame their failures on. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Yeah, I can see that argument. I've heard that made before. You know, who would we point our fingers at? Well, we would be pointing at ourselves, right? Because the gap will be filled by, you know, right now they could kind of hide the West Virginian white boy who's strung out. They kind of hide him with some black nonsense. No black people around, no hiding that no more, you know. Let's welcome in our sister Cheryl to the panel. Cheryl, how are you this week?
Doing good. How are you?
Cheryl, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for joining us this week. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think it's a little
Cheryl, what are your
behind.
thoughts on this system? All right, you may have a delay, but
Yeah,
when the
I'm
delay
ready.
is over, just let us know your thoughts. Okay, I don't know
I
what's
think
going
I'm
on.
I think I'm gonna switch to my computer because I'm on my phone. Maybe that's where the delay is.
All right, do your thing.
Mhm.
In the meantime, let's welcome in our brother RDG, Real Black Gentleman. How you been, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Great, thanks for coming through.
Well, yeah, it's good to be back. I
What do
guess.
you?
Well, I would say as far as like Black Steel had said, it's in order to leave. You know what I'm saying? In order, I mean, if we're talking practical, realistic stuff, I mean, like, shoot, if we could move 50 million people in one go, I mean, imagine that kind of power. We could do a lot of things if we had that kind of power. But like, it's like my thing is the whole how would we be accepted in Africa? I think it would be a big spag. Um, I so much to say that some of us probably have no business going back, and how that would go. But like, I do think it would be a mixed bag. Black people do carry a lot of just tendencies, but I wouldn't go so far as just to say that we're tainted necessarily by the white man, and that if we go there we'll just like pollute or anything like that. I mean, now the whole Liberia thing, I sympathize a touch with the Americans, man, because you got to recognize those people a lot of those were in bondage, and when they got back, they did not want to be anywhere close to the bottom. They wanted to do what they had to do as much as they could with the means. And I've said it before, the roughshod-ness, was there. I mean, did they go hard? Yeah. But would I say that that's a tainting by the white man? No, because other African tribes can do that and have done that to historically recorded degrees to other peoples, not to the not to the exact, style. I mean, again, I'm not going to say bringing in Firestone and all that was good. I mean, I think they got swindled on that, but this isn't like, again, the 50s and 60s and 70s. Like, the internet's here, so like, if you were to have like a mass movement, chances are it's going to be coordinated with a country. And once you have that, at least, in modern times, I mean, relative modern times, I don't think any African country would even let 50,000 black people run roughshod, over, over the proceedings. You know what I'm saying? Even if that, it just wouldn't happen. Numbers is numbers. You know what I'm saying? Numbers is numbers. Yeah. I mean, this country would raise a fit. It'd be very ugly, because you would have situations of people, just starting something against, black people, let's say in the airports, You know what I'm saying? It would be ugly. You know what I'm saying? You would have ugly incidents. I mean, to the extent that they would go to war against black people trying to leave. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like that again is an ugly situation, but I mean, my whole thing is like the raw capacity. And so like you can't leave fast enough. We don't have the planes or the boats. I mean, a boat will carry a lot more people than a plane would. You know what I'm saying? You can build a cruise ship with you know what I'm saying, that can, you know what I'm saying, carry 10,000 people. You can fashion a boat that can carry 10,000 people. You know what I'm saying? If you can crank out about 20 of those, yeah, you might be able to get some flow, but it wouldn't be instantaneously. Just, you know what I'm saying? It's impractical, you know what I'm saying, for a lot of black people just to move in mass, just because it's just a resource situation. None of that would be, you know what I'm saying, given to us. You know what I'm saying? It would be a chaotic situation if indeed anything close to that were to happen, because you'd have a whole lot of bottlenecks. You know what I'm saying? And it's just a whole lot of like, things going on in the world. You know what I'm saying? Who would help us? Who really has the resources at the moment to help black people? Who would even like be inclined to do that? No one really. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I know what she's trying to do. Like, I'm not even big on Chat GPT, just because like the information that Chat GPT has is only the information that has been given to it. And that's like information that either people put on the internet or like scanned information. The computers don't know about 1957. You know what I'm saying? They can't conceive of that. They don't know what people were thinking about. The only way that they know is fragments of data, basically. So like chat, I mean, yeah, it's a funny way of going about it. They try to like, scry a crystal ball to say like, you know what I'm saying, this will happen. But I mean, just so as a thought experiment, I mean, there could be ugly situations that happen, but there could be a lot of bounty, you know what I'm saying, for the people who actually made it through, and if it was actually coordinated. I'll pass the mic. Thank you.
Appreciate that, RBG. My computer's freezing up, so I'm sorry if the audio quality is kind of messed up a little bit, but we're gonna make it through. We're gonna end at 11. In the meantime, let me see if I could get Cheryl again. Cheryl, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, Cheryl. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it is true that, I mean, first of all, it's not realistic to think that all black people would leave the United States, because we all know that that's true. For those of us who are African American, we know we can pick out at least 10 people in our family where we can say, you ain't, no. You cannot come back. You cannot come back to Africa, but nor would they wouldn't want to, unless Africa started to get it popping like America, or, one of these other, European countries that they love so much. They're not coming back. But, if Africa started getting like that, then they might consider it, because they're just looking, again, they're looking with their binoculars like, is it fixed yet? Okay, as soon as it's fixed, we're going. But at that point, it's like, we don't want you. You know what I mean? So I mean, maybe it's good that it's like that, because we don't need certain people. So I could just look at my family and then my husband's family, and my husband's Jamaican, and boy, whew, I ain't gonna get into details, but it's I just
You don't
personally.
even gotta say. You don't even gotta say. You don't gotta
Woo,
say.
woo,
You don't even
it's
gotta say.
crazy. Oh my God. I'm not gonna name names or nothing like that. I'm respectful, and I love my family. I love my extended family, but man, it's you talking about Jamaican people that don't even want to be associated with Africa. Like, and they sound so African, and it's just like, bro, y'all like, huh? Like, it was a culture shock for me, for being African American, seeing Jamaicans that want to disassociate. They want to associate more with England than they want to associate with Africa. It's just crazy. It's wild. And I know it happens. I'm not stupid. I'm not ignorant to the fact that happens, but it's like, wow. Like, so, I mean, yeah, it's that. And just one more thing, the thing about, I think she may have said that white people need black people in the United States and da da da. Maybe to an extent that's true with the prison system, majority make up of black people, there's free labor, they pay them pennies on the dollar for cheap labor and everything like that. So maybe they do need them in that sense. And that's okay. They like I said, we don't need all of the black people to come back to Africa. We just don't, because some of them are so far gone all throughout the diaspora. We don't need them. And that's okay. I'll land my
I
plane.
appreciate that, Cheryl. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining us too. So if you can, just stick around with us as we get into the last topic in a few minutes. I guess there's a delay going on. Kofi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can hear me?
Okay, maybe. Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
can
sir.
hear me? Okay.
What are your thoughts on this?
Now, this is a very, very, very good topic. The Chat GPT thing. Like, come on now. Like, that's. She felt very confident of doing Chat GPT. Like, this is facts. It's just like all the topics that she hit, you could have a huge discussion on it. The thing that I'm pushing, the one thing that it said that is very true, that I do agree that America would lack a lot of culture. It will lack a lot of culture because Black American culture is very pivotal to American culture. Because if it wasn't for Black Americans, right, like white people will still be doing the waltz and big band music, right? They'll still be doing the waltz and just very, very bland. They may play a little Beethoven and things like that. It'll just be orchestra and them not dancing because they can't do country music. They can't do jazz music. They can't do no rock and roll or anything like that. The thing that she's making it seem like it's a problem that it's gonna be a problem because there's gonna be all these jobs there's gonna be like this big huge vacuum. Who gives a fuck? Who cares? That's a good thing. That's your strength. That should not be a problem. She also said that I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, saying if Black Americans were to all move, they that Black Americans provide millions of jobs. That I do not know about that. What I'm saying, like 100% Black owned companies that just hire Black people. I don't know of any such company. All the Black companies that I know personally are very small, modest companies. They're not Fortune 500 companies, but I could be wrong, right? She said the Democratic Party is going to shift if all Black Americans go, and I also disagree with that because we're only 14% of the population. If all Black people were to vote, it wouldn't tilt. It wouldn't tilt it in any direction. Everything else you said is true, but like our brother, I don't know if he's on here because I just got on here. Like, but our brother Anthony McPhail would say, this is plantation bragging. She is basically just being proud of what indirectly, she's being proud of what Black people contribute to America, but at the same time, I find it very funny, and I'm going to keep using this analogy because it's a brilliant analogy. That, like I said before, Chris Rock, you got to look at America as the uncle that paid your way through college but molested you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's a very weird, battered wife syndrome that some Black Americans have with America. You know what I'm saying? We could be patriotic, but you're too patriotic, then you look kind of funny. But basically what it is basically this plantation bragging. And I don't find, to me, as a Pan-African, that is a reason. Obviously, Marcus Garvey said he don't wish all Black people to go to Africa because the ones that are no good here, we've been no good there. Like our sister that came before me said that. But it shows you that Black people have an impact. And she said we'll take wealth away from the company, take wealth away from the United States. Good. That's the whole. That's the beauty of Pan African. Why would you continue to invest? Now, I'm not saying all Black Americans will get up and leave. That's not what Pan Africanism is. I don't know how she got into the whole. Well, if Black Americans ought to leave, because some people that don't understand Pan Africanism have this thing where we all need to just get up from where we are, no matter where we are in the world, and just leave. No, that's not what it is. That'll be a nice thing, but that's not what it's supposed to be. It's a global. It's a global phenomenon. It's a global thing. You can still be here in America. You can still be in Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados, wherever, and be a Pan African and link. Look at Europeans. Europeans do, and I gotta switch it to a white view, because Europeans do Pan Europeanism. You have England, right, and you have people from Australia. They're still English, right? You got people in Australia. They did impact in here in America. You have people in India. They did Pan-Europeanism, and barely a European have to leave the island of England, of the UK. But they have a network going on. They have a network and a system that's going on. That's what Pan-Africanism should be. So it depends how you see what she just said. I see it as kind of insulting, but at the same time, for what it's worth, I find that to be very, very encouraging as far as a whole when it comes to Black people and the influence that Black people have in America. Imagine the influence that we can have in Africa. So to me, that's how I see it. I'm trying to turn lemons into lemonade when it comes to this prompt. I'll pass the mic.
I appreciate that, Kofi. With that said, I think that takes us to Buana. Buana, what are your thoughts on everything you heard?
Yes, sir. So before I begin, I would just like to put my caveat out there. To my African, notice Koku chose me last because I am not in America. This is just my soul coconut third world tether opinion about the question that he asked, and I'm not trying to offend none of my brethren in the United States of America. I want to put that out there. That's first and foremost. Secondly, let me say this. The sister Shirley said her husband is Jamaican. If he's from Kingston, I pray for you, sister. I wish you the best of luck. Needless to say, I was started like this.
Dang.
No.
He's actually he was actually born in Canada. But
Oh, he's a
yeah.
Canadian. You're more Canadian. I know. Canadians are good people. Canadians are good people. I have
Caravana.
For real?
I used to live in Scarborough. So I
He
know.
says too white. He says too white up there.
Yeah, I used to live in Scarborough. But I love Canada. Canadians are good people. But I'm Jamaicans too. But how'd I go? But needless to say, let me say this. First, let me say this. In looking at America, I am looking at it from a third world perspective. So when I look at the country of America, I ask myself the question, what makes America a first world country? What makes them the leader of many things in America? So you would look first at a scientific level and scientific integrity. Okay? If Black Americans in mass was to leave America, would the scientific integrity of America suffer? So I asked myself that question. When I asked myself that question, I am reminded by something called, somebody have the thing open. Could you lock it off for me, please? So I am reminded of something called Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was when the American government decided to import German Nazis who were scientists in the German government building weapons and stuff like that. They imported them into the country to get their scientific know-how. This is one of the ways that America kind of became a global power. They used Nazi scientific labor. Okay, so if African, so they really have a lot of the monopoly on. Well, not this. They have a lot of the monopoly in terms of the scientific integrity of America. So if African Americans was to leave, would America suffer? I don't know. The Americans will have to answer that question. So on a medical level, if African Americans in mass were to leave America, would, on a medical level, would they suffer? Well, look in the medical industry in America and see who are the most predominant people. Who are they? They're the Indians. Many of the people, Indians and Africans, you would see a lot of foreign labor in the medical market for labor force in terms of industry in America, keeping them at really the cusp, at the head of the medical integrity and really the head of the world as far as medicine is concerned. They're ahead of the world. So African Americans was to leave, would they suffer? Maybe, but there are not that many African Americans as far as the medical field in terms of medical research and things of that nature. I don't know. The Americans will have to answer that. Technologically, I know who running the technologically. The Indian labor force, because Elon Musk hires Indian labor, especially in Silicon Valley, really, and stuff like that. Many of these people are in. That's the Indian labor force. Have a lot of a monopoly on as far as the technological integrity of America. So what is left? What is left? Culturally, culturally, absolutely. Culturally, America would suffer if the Americans in mass would decide to leave America. However, just as the Americans use culturally, they use the African Americans. They can use the Indian culture too. Don't they have the Redskins? They call them Redskins, and they would use Mexican labor south of the border. They would use their culture too, because Mexicans have culture too. So the culture will change, but they would use them too. So I think absolutely they would lose a whole lot of the cultural integrity, but they will import that. They will import tethers like me from Caribbean and gas them or from Africa to bring back the because we have culture in the Caribbean, they have culture in Nigeria, so they will just bring that here and use that as a form of culture to prevail around the world, to replace the fact that African Americans have decided to leave. There's a good book called Who Needs the Negro? Who Needs the Negro? This guy who wrote it in the 70s, I think, called Sidney Wilhelm. Good conversation, really, in just what we talking about right now. Yeah, and they're like, what if the Negroes, it wasn't around? What would happen? It's a good book to read. It's a good book to read. The Hitler them, the Jews in Germany had these same kind of arguments because the Jews were integrated to the German system in America, in Germany, and and the question was like, oh, what happens if we get rid of the Jews? What will happen to us? They decided that. Hitler decided that. So the fact that people believe, well, some of the brothers and sisters believe that, oh, we could never get rid of the African Americans. The Jews believe the same thing. They believe the same thing
Yeah.
until they were walking towards the ovens and saying, you could be replaced too. You could be replaced too. So
Oh,
don't ever think that your labor, even if it's integral to America or whatever, don't think a white supremacist can't replace you, brother, because they certainly can. And history is an indication of that. So
To the left, to the left.
the only thing that I would tell my American brothers and sisters is, you know what I mean? Do for self. Yeah, I'm a
I
guy.
hear,
At the
I,
end
I
of the day,
do,
let me
I
let me
hear what you're
let me
saying
finish.
about the medical stuff and
Let me
how,
finish. Let me finish, Sarah Lee. Let me finish.
oh, my
So,
bad.
no worries. So I respect what the brothers had to say on the panel. I listen to the African American brothers, but don't think that y'all ever irreplaceable, because the white supremacists have a devious mindset, and they will try to. They will try to. So at the end of the day, do for self. All we got is each other. You know what I mean? Always have a second backup plan to make sure if they try it, we can still survive. We can exist wherever we are on this planet. That's the only thing I would tell my African American brothers and sisters. I'll end it there.
Cheryl, you want to add something?
Yeah, just real quick. I know, like, because, like, any black people in the United States, can be replaced at the drop of a hat. I mean, white people do it all the time. Like they bring in, white foreigners from, all places all over Europe and all the stuff like that. But you did, and so you definitely right about that. But the stuff about the medical stuff, about how Indians are, they're at the top and, they're the ones, in the medical field. I don't, and that is definitely a good point, but I don't think America is run by the U.S. economy is driven by consumer spending, business investment, and government activities. That's if the U.S. economy didn't have those three things, it would not be able to run. So I just want to keep that in mind. So when people say that, if African Americans stop spending, it's $1 trillion. They're right, but they're right for the wrong reasons. Because she's right, but she's right because she believes that, she wants to stay in America. She should be right and be wanting to leave America. So that's the main problem here. So just remember those things that are driven, the U.S. economy is driven by, because Americans are huge consumers. That's a huge part. And then you got the military, and that's another chunk. So that's the bare. Those are the basic things that make up the American economy.
I
Let's
would also like.
Cheryl, go.
I would also like to say in regards to your husband being Jamaican and stuff like that, but my wife's people is from St. Anne, so yeah, good luck. So, but when it comes to when you're to your to your surprise, yeah, like Jamaicans, most of my friends are Jamaican, and again, my wife knows this, and she's Jamaican. You cannot tell a Jamaican that they're wrong. You can't tell a Jamaican they always right, no matter what. They
I
always
said,
right. But
ma'am, you are not British. They will fight you.
yeah, yeah. Well, see, and the thing about Jamaica is so unique. Uh, from my perspective, Jamaica is. If you take all the Caribbean countries, Jamaica is supposed to be one of the most African conscious places because you got Garvey and you got Bob Marley, right? So these people spoke about African and them being African people, but at the same time,
Bob
you
Marley
still
don't
have
count.
people.
But continue.
you, you still have people that are still have a colonized mindset. Me, as a Guyanese person growing up, and my mother was around when Guyana got its independence. When Americans are colonized, they want to be like the founding fathers. They want to be like, George Washington and all this other stuff. The same dynamic is for people from the Caribbean. They want to be, they look towards the crown. They want to be English. You know what I'm saying? They want to be English. And that is not uncommon. It's all a form of colonization. Like I said before, I asked my mother, I was like, what's the Guyanese national anthem? Well, I was talking when she was a little girl. Oh, when I was a little girl, yeah, we sung the English national anthem, God hail the Queen and da 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 da. And then I was like, oh, but you also have a Guyanese one. Yeah, but we used to sing the Guyanese national anthem. So I was like, wait. You sang the English national anthem. Then after that, you sung the Guyanese national anthem? She was like, yeah. I was like, mommy, that make no sense. She's like, what you mean? Like, you got your independence, so why are you still singing the English national anthem? She's like, you know what, boy, you're right. It's because it's like, it's just a form of colonization. Just because we're free doesn't mean we're mentally free. So like we make fun, like me being raised as a Christian. You make like just to say a lot of things that made no sense to you. You had crazy like, is by your arms, you need to throw some water on you, or someone dunk you in some water. I was like what's all this stuff? You know what I'm saying? They know they're African, but they fighting that they African. I'm like,
It's
that's an
crazy.
African. Yeah, it's like, we was, but what they say? Or Jumbi and Jumbi. I learned Jumbi. If you look at my channel, Jumbi is one of our own ancestors. Not our ancestors. It's a spiritual deity, right? But that protected us, and then we came over here, and it's something that's supposed to like protect us, and something we're supposed to look up to. But in Guyana, Jumbi is a bad thing. Jumbie's like, it's like, oh, boy, what's wrong with you? Got Jumbie on you? You see Jumbie? What wrong with that? It's like, so I'm like, so when you grow up and you learn and you learn and you find out who you are and you realize how much we've been colonized. The thing that's supposed to protect you, you're running from. But you see a white Jesus, they're supposed to save you. It's like, what? It makes no sense, but that's the thing about colonization. And I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I want to just
Any other last thoughts on this?
yeah, I want to say,
Go ahead, Oda.
black people going to America, going to Africa en masse has no realism to it. What we have to come to terms with is that 99% of black people do not want to leave America, right? And the 1% that does want to go, they don't have the resources to. When I wake up in Africa, I realize that I'm in a very unique position, a very fortunate position, because I don't really know white people like that, in America or whatever. But like, even white people in America are going through some shit, like not only because the economy is trash, but generally speaking, a lot of white people are, bums, poor, broke, homeless, this, that, so on and so forth. A lot of, and of course, if black people are doing financially worse than white people, and white people are doing financially poorly, that's it. But my situation is unique in the sense that I'm not doing that bad, you know? And not a lot of people can say that, especially because, I have that kind of freedom. And that freedom that I have, in fact, I really shouldn't talk about it. You know what I mean? But the reality is that digital nomad life is something that most people can't do. And technically a lot of people can't even do it like they shouldn't do it, So the question then becomes, well, how could you do this? How could a normal person, or under normal circumstances, how can you do like a repatriation situation? Like, you would have to pay another country, right, for the right to work. And we all know about the right to work. We all know about workers' permits. We applied for them when we were like 16 or something, right? That workers' permit, our parents paid for it, or maybe it was free, I don't remember. But it's expensive AF in African countries, right? Now you pay for that workers' permit. All of a sudden you're open for the job market. What job are you getting? Right? What job are you getting? And how much does it pay? Now, it's not to say that there's no high-paying jobs in Africa, because there are plenty. Are you going to get one? And is it going to be with a black organization? Right? Those are the questions. And, I don't even have answers for them myself. And I've been here for, quite a long time. I don't even have answers for them myself. I can't imagine what it would be like if I didn't have, my own fortunate circumstances. That said, it's really, it's wishful thinking to think that one, that black people even want to go to Africa, but two, that black people can even go to Africa. It makes no sense in a logistical, mindset. It makes no sense. Why? How could you displace 40 million people, 50 million people, and put them into a country they don't want to be? Obviously, the white man did it before using ships and so on and so forth. But if you're not using ships, if you're not forcing black people to leave, they're not leaving. Just like if you were to have gone to Africa and not have forced those African people to leave and go to America, they wouldn't have went. Most people are not moving in mass, let alone to all settle in one country and go buy whatever. It's just not happening. So my view is, obviously, like, I tell people that they should repatriate, but even I am coming to the terms of the reality that it's easier said than done, And if it weren't for my own particular, good fortune, right? In some respects, if it weren't for that, I probably couldn't do it either. You know what I mean? Like if you're working 40 hours a day for 11 months of the, no, matter of fact, 11 months and a half a year, right? You can't go to Africa. Like, it's just like, you just can't. Now, I know this one guy, he's a trucker. I meant to say that too. He was a trucker. He works maybe 3 months in America, makes enough money as a trucker, right? And then goes and lives in Africa like a king, right? But that's a guy with a high-paying job, you know? And of course, even if you have a high-paying job, if you're working for 3 months, you're sacrificing 9. But he's like, oh, I'll take the 9-month sacrifice for the good life in Africa. But you know, I don't make as much as a damn trucker. You know what I mean? And a lot of Black people are not working on those kind of flexible schedules. You know, so a lot of Black people can probably move to Africa after they retire, and they'll live pretty comfortably. But if you're actively working, you don't have the time to be in Africa. You know, like I said, I have more fortunate circumstances, but you know, again, my circumstances are more fortunate than white folk. You know what I mean? Like, I could go to white folk and brag, and they'd be like, damn, where did this Negro come from? You know what I mean? So, but like, most Black people can't do that, obviously. And that's all I have to say.
Is there any other last thoughts or comments on this prompt? You know, we're at the 3-hour mark. It's about to be 11, so we'll make that the last prompt for tonight. I did have another interesting one, but we'll pick that up next time we do a broadcast. In the meantime, though, before everyone leaves the panel, I'd like to get shout outs from everyone for something positive they experienced personally or they witnessed in the Black world since we last broadcasted. So I'm just going to go down the line and ask folks. Jacadero, what would you like to shout out this week?
3 things. One, Koku. This is episode 193, right? 193. Yeah. So big shout out to you, man. You're killing it, man. I can't believe that it's 193 episodes, and you know, we still have brothers like Buana interrupting and then also being interrupted. The kind of irony that that we have on this show. Second shout out is South Sudan. South Sudan told the United States at the beginning of the week, we are not going to accept a deportee that we believe and have evidence that it is that deportee is a Congolese national. Wow. I wish they would have went through, because I was getting reports that the South Sudan government ended up accepting them under pressure from the United States. But at least them stepping up and saying, we don't give a damn. We ain't gonna make that. We ain't gonna accept him. So that was pretty big to see. Again, they caved in, it looks like, and they'll be accepting him. I have a friendship with a South Sudanese national in the embassy. So he's giving me this play-by-play, but they haven't sent back that individual yet. He has yet to reach the grounds, but at least, you know, them stepping up and telling the United States, we ain't gonna go for that. Mark Rubio, you can suck our D, huh? Pause. And then the third shout out, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, and shout out to the Empowerment Network. That's right, the Empowerment Network at empoweromaha.com. The Empowerment Network is the Black empowerment organization that puts on the yearly Rebuilding a Village Conference. That's right, it's for you, each and every one of you here that are listening and that will listen to the later recording of this episode. The Rebuilding a Village Conference is every summer here in Omaha, Nebraska, bringing like-minded individuals from finance, health, trades, development, real estate, and everything in between from the areas, of course, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Memphis, Tennessee, Cincinnati, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Little Rock, Arkansas, and everywhere else. I encourage you guys, each and every one of you guys on the panel, and each and one of you guys that are listening and in the chat to please register. And I want to see each and every one of you guys at Rebuilding a Village conference put on by the Empowerment Network. Go ahead and register at empoweromaha.com, the official website of the #1 Black empowerment organization here in the Midwest.
I like that energy, Jacadero. Thank you very much. Shout out to Zuli in the chat. I meant to point him out with his indigenous American stuff earlier, but shout out to Zuli. With that said, Black Steel, what would you like to shout out this week?
Shout out to the young brother Carmelo Anthony. He recently raised $300,000 for his legal defense. In case those of you who didn't know, this young black man was at a football game. He was accosted by some white thug, and he defended himself. He stabbed the white aggressor, and he's been locked up on $1 million bail for murder charges, even though it was determined that the white boy was the aggressor. The white boy punched him in the face, broke his phone. He had a previous confrontation with this same white boy and his twin brother. And they've imprisoned this young man who merely defended himself. Black people have a right to defend themselves. We're no one's punching bag. We're not here for you to vent your aggression on. So he's raised almost $500,000 for his legal defenses. And, I support him. I hope he gets off. This is an obvious case of self-defense. And that's my shout out for today.
Yeah, good shout out. I totally forgot about his story in defending himself against these two white thugs. So good pickup there, Black Steel. Appreciate it. Real quick, Trigger Happy 262 Plus in the chat says Niger has officially dropped French for Hausa. I saw that. Also, Burkina Faso electric cars look so good. He made a prompt about it. I guess we'll get to it next time I do a broadcast. But yeah, Burkina Faso, the electric cars look good. And if I'm not mistaken, Trick, I think Ghana also unveiled some electric cars a couple months ago, actually. Brother Bakari says, I'm shouting out everybody on the panel and the chat, and I'm giving a shout out to every shout out I'll be making in the future. So with that said, let's go down the line. Oni, what would you like to shout out this week?
Well, yeah, not to be arrogant, but I'm going to shout out, what did I do? I made like a KWAZ book, Basically, my son is in a school where they do religious studies, And even now, my son is like kind of like talking like, oh, something heaven, something hell, angels and blah, blah, blah. And, but he's not being taught by the teachers. He's just picking up what the other students are doing, what the other students are saying. That said, I said to myself, hey, look, on Fridays, because that's when they do the 1 hour of study, right? The teacher asked me, hey, what do you want for your son? The mosque or the church, And I'm like, can you do neither? And she's like, yeah. And so, but I said, okay, if this boy's not doing either, let me write up a book for him to read while the other kids are reading nonsense. Let me write a book for sense. So this book is kind of really a lot of it ancient Egyptian stuff. Some of my stuff, some of ancient Egyptian stuff. But I realized too that the ancient Egyptian stuff is really, really good stuff. Just the same as, the Bible is good for its ancient wisdom, and the Quran is good for its ancient wisdom. And, a part of me says they have nonsense and sense. What I'm saying is that the ancient Egyptians also have nonsense and sense, but the ancient Egyptians have a lot of sense, a lot of sense. And if everybody else is studying something from the ancient world, let my son also. And so I printed up a book. It's about 23 pages. And of course, I'm just going to give it away for free. So you guys could, if anybody's interested, anybody listening, interested, just look at the chat, look at the comments. You'll see I dropped the link to a Google Drive. It's there. You could read it, and it's good. And that's pretty much it. I'm just shouting out, and maybe I might do that more often. Just shout out that work in particular because, I'm not saying my son benefited yet. He's still, whatever. But it's just something to give your children some sort of consistent reading of lessons and morals and how to handle the world. And if they don't understand it the first day, like none of us understood the Bible the first day. But many of us I didn't read it, but many people who do read the Bible, they didn't understand it the first day, but they read it enough that they say, okay, I could repeat this. I see a lesson, So with my son, it's like, this is not, it's not a children's book, but at the same time, over time, 10 years from now, and he's still reading the same 20 pages, it's probably going to click to him, hey, behave a certain way. Don't go into random fights, handle your paper, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So that's pretty much it. Shouting out my own stuff, but it is what it is. Bill Gates did it. That's it.
Nah, good stuff. I checked it out the other day when you posted it on Twitter. So you guys click the link, check it out, and I'm not sure if he wants it or not, but maybe you want to give Oni some feedback or some big ups for the work that he did there. Provide triggers for evolution. The chat says Ghanaian students no longer have to wear Eurocentric uniforms in some schools. That's pretty dope too. This is a real good one. Brother Bakari says, I'm giving a shout out to my son Kibwe for earning a $10K scholarship from Deloitte, the world's largest business finance firm. So shout out. I don't have the sound effect of clapping, but shout out to Kibwe, who's been on the show. Yes, appreciate it. Yeah, so with that said, man, let me talk to Black Steel for his shout out this week. No, actually, he did give it a shout out. Let me talk to Real Black Gentleman for his shout out this week.
Hey, I guess you kind of beat me to the punch with Carmelo. But one thing I wanted to add with Carmelo, that is a shout out though. He actually saved a child from drowning like years ago. There was a story, it was in the newspaper. I saw it on a YouTube video. But the young man actually, a child was drowning, and he jumped into the pool and saved the child. So you know what I'm saying? He's the truth. You know what I'm saying? He's the truth. I want to shout out. I want to shout out Gas Them Up just cause like Gas Them Up also. You know what I'm saying? I think he's the truth. I just want to give him a shout out. I've been busy. You know what I'm saying? I haven't been around. I've been trying to get better myself, and I'm gonna kind of shout out myself. I gotta I'm in a better situation than I was last year, so I'm happy for myself. I'm glad I went ahead and made the move that I had to do. But other than that, yeah, I'm just happy. I'm happy to be able to speak my mind, you know what I'm saying, with like-minded people. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Good stuff, RBG. Congratulations. You're in a better situation than before. So I'm glad to hear that, man. Provide Triggers for Evolution says she's shouting out her 27-year-old son too for having deployed his own coaching academy. Man, shout out to that too. I'll clap for that. Shout out for that. I didn't know Provide Triggers had a son that age. I always think of Provide Triggers as a very young Black woman for some reason. With that said, let me hear from Cheryl. Cheryl, what would you like to shout out this week?
Okay, so I like to shout out the Ivory Coast for banning wigs and weaves in their pageants. And I also would like to shout out Burkina Faso for banning the use of British and French colonial era judicial wigs. Nigeria hasn't done it yet, but that's okay. It's a work in progress. And anytime, just I know there's not too many women, in this chat, but anytime you guys ever think, well, why do I have to get rid of these wigs? Well, I got natural beauty too. It doesn't matter what kind of hair I wear. Next time you thinking like that, just think about how much money you're putting into the pockets of these Asian people, because they've been making money hand over fist in the Black community for decades. And it's $1 billion industry. It's probably $1 trillion industry by now. If you combine all of the Black people in the world, all of the places that they sell weaves and wigs, you know, their Eurasian hair, or should I call it fur? It's not. It's just a mess. And so, just to shout out, you know, the Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso for doing that. That is excellent, and I hope more African countries follow suit.
Thank you for that, Cheryl. Real quick, Trill. Happy in the chat said he asked Cheryl, "Could you link me an article to that?" I didn't know that with Ivory Coast. So Cheryl, if you have a chance, drop a link in the chat. Thank you for joining us this week as well, by the way. With that said, let me get a shout out from Kofi.
As always, Black Steel always take my ideas. Always takes my ideas and my shouts and everything. But
Mainly Black man, it's the American way, huh?
Yeah. But yeah, to him, yeah, I want to really shout out to him. And look, all life is precious. I wish death on nobody except for murderers and child molesters and rapists. But at the same time, you know, this is something that a lesson that needs to be learned. You know, I know this turned into a little bit of a lecture, but white supremacists and white supremacists have to understand that there are consequences to their actions, right? We have to start. I'm not advocating violence. I don't want to get your channel shut down. I'm not advocating violence. I'm advocating defense and justice. And this is something that a lesson that they need to learn, that they need to think twice, right? I always talk about post-traumatic slave syndrome, but white people suffer from post-traumatic master syndrome. They feel that they have a right to do to us and say things to us without no consequence. So I want to shout out to that brother. Keep your head, your head up high. Hopefully, his family's visit him and letting them know that all Black people is behind him. I want to contribute to him as well. And shout out to Bikini Faso. And just so to you, Koku, and this platform, you are a very important part of my life right now. And because the content you put is very good. And I look forward to every Saturday. And shout out to you too as well, brother. Thank you.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. With that said, let's hear. I think Buana's the last person. Buana, what would you like to shout out this week? Can you guys hear Buana?
No, I don't hear Buana.
Hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
we can hear you, Buana.
Okay, so first let me just say shout out to Brother Bakari's son Kiwe for getting that $10,000 grant. I think that is a beautiful thing. I think that he has a strong dad behind him who is supporting him in his academic efforts. And I say shout out to him. Congratulations. The world is yours. I would tell Kiwe that. That's the first thing. The second thing is support empowering Omaha. The brother is doing great things in Omaha, Nebraska. I know people don't know about Omaha, Nebraska, but he is trying to present a concerted effort in Omaha, Nebraska. In his small field or whatever, he is trying to collectively bring people together. Jacadero, I will financially support it. I can't come there physically, not yet, but I will support that economically. I think that you are actually trying to do something. I get behind the brothers who are trying to do something. For Oni, all my brothers and sisters on listening and the sound of my voice, Oni is he is a scholar, but he is also a writer, and he's written several books on different kinds of topics. Go on his website on Amazon.com and buy one of his books. He's a very good writer. To be honest with you, very good writer. So I would just advise if you all have an opportunity to get one of his books if you can. So shout out to Oni for being a good writer and being a good yeoman of the written word. You know what I mean? Passing on that way you go. Metanetta, that's what they call it. Metanetta. But he's doing the continuation of that writing. and that's very, very good for our community. So if you can support his effort in his creating books. Let me say my shout outs now. Shout out to the Donald Trump, and shout out to Donald Trump for levying.
What the fuck?
I always try to tell you. I always try.
Let him land his plane. Let him land his plane. You fell for the
Oh my
trap.
God.
Let him land his plane.
Hold on, let him cook.
I always
Nah, he about to burn the kitchen down. Let him cook.
Not let him cook.
I always try to tell Black Steel weak because he always jumping the gun. He always jumping the gun. But shout out to Donald Trump for his tariffs. His tariffs. Let me say this. In the Bahamas, if I was to buy 3 stalks of lettuce right now in the same package, it costs $11.90. It costs $10.90 US. US. With the tariffs, what he put on, because we buy most of our products from y'all, now this government decided, oh, let's do trade elsewhere. They diversified trade. Now we getting agricultural stuff, what we used to import from the United States, in other countries, which brought down the cost of things like lettuce and tomatoes and onions. I don't have to pay $10 US for 3 stalks of lettuce anymore. Indirectly, he doesn't know that he is causing a situation that we are, in the rest of the world, we are creating other kinds of relationships. What is needed long time ago. The Marco Rubio, yeah, I know. Marco Rubio says if you do business with Cuba, you will no longer, if you're a leader in any of these Caribbean countries, you don't have a visa to come to Americas. The Prime Minister of Barbados say, F you. You know what I mean? We could do what we got to do. I am happy that some of the Caribbean leaders are not always north looking. We always north looking. Form relationships with the people, your neighbors next door to you, or the global south, or maybe Africa. So sometimes indirectly, when people do things, it have different kinds of effect in the world. You know, Malcolm X said when he was asked, "Is there any such thing as a good white man?" He said, "Yeah, Hitler." And the reason why he said that is because it's the reason why a lot of African Americans was given opportunity in the army itself, even to operate. You know what I mean? To be a part of. So you have indirect effects. With this silly person who is in the White House right now, he doesn't understand what he's actually doing. But I appreciate the fact that he is forcing some of these Negroes in the rest of the world to form other kinds of relationships in other.
Buana, you don't understand the art of the deal, Buana. That's your problem.
Yeah, no, well, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't, Kofi. We'll talk about it another time because these are American politics, and I know you heavy on American politics. But I'm saying that it's helpful to the rest of us, man. It's helpful because gas in my country is $6 a gallon. You know what I mean? These are unheard of prices in some places in the world. So we have to have different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people. And if our government's hands are forced to find other avenues to find different kinds of relationships, I am happy about that. You know what I mean? It put a little bit of air conditioning in a hot room for us. You know what I mean? For the rest of the global south. But I'll leave it there. I appreciate the brothers as always. As always, thank you for the valuable contributions. I'll leave it there.
Well done, everyone. Like I said at the start of the show, if you weren't here, I'm not going to be here next week. I have to travel. So next Saturday we'll be off, but unless someone wants to guest host, but we should be back hopefully a week after thereabouts. So until then, man, you guys be good. I'll see you guys probably during the week on other platforms or talking or posting on social media. But in the meantime, man, you guys be good. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, We hope you pass along our web address, bitamedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Beta Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Beta Medicine Show, Twitter, Beta Meds, Tumblr, Beta Meds, Instagram, Beta Medicine.